to the No Practice Podcast,
where we cover the only sport in the world where there is no practice. With your mini rod driving host,
Adam Kester, Tyler Slaw, and Chase Richardson.
Strap in for some debates on the world of pulling, exclusive special guests, and a whole lot of nonsense BS. The No Practice Podcast starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 37 of the No Practice Podcast. We are dealing with some technical difficulties. This is the third time we've tried introing the show. We had to go back to our old way of doing things, but we've got the whole gang here. Mr. Chase Richardson, Adam Kester, hunkered down in a basement. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight? Adam, where are you, and what is going on there?
And what is... I think, I'm in my mom's basement. Krieger and up here. Dan Mayer.
Guys, hear me?
Dan, Miles, and Jeremy are sabotaging our show. They've come in with the splash. People are watching them. I think they're in the back end somewhere pulling some plugs and really challenging us. But you know what, guys? We do it live. We don't record it. This is still number one. Good luck in y'all's endeavors this week in pulling. But anyway, third time's a charm. Sorry for the technical difficulty, Adam. I think you had a bit of delay. I don't want an interruption for that, but I think we're in a storm shelter in St. Wendell, Indiana, right?
Yeah, I apologize right now if my internet is off at all, and I'm in a new location. I'm in the bunker in my mother's house. Have severe weather rolling in. I don't know exactly what's going on. We've been messing with the computer here. Sorry to the fans for we're trying to do.
Well, yeah.
It's just like us in pulling sometimes. If it's
strings and we're getting a few issues. Yeah.
Try to elevate the show and do better things, and all we do is screw up, just like we do in pulling sometimes. Oh, I heard a siren.
Yep, I heard a siren as well. Adam, for our audio-only listeners, Adam just muted his microphone as we heard some sort of siren as he pulled his headphones off, and he's discussing something with panic in his eyes to somebody off screen here. Hopefully there's not tornado sirens going off.
We got it. No, it's just it's a tornado warning.
Okay.
Well, third time through, we've covered, for those on YouTube, we're sorry again. Got Ryan DeBroux in the back end, well notarized semi-puller. Ryan, we apologize for making the 37th show our one with the first technical difficulties, but like semi-pulling, there's a lot of technical difficulties at times because they're such a pain they have to work on. They're big, large vehicles that are underappreciated. So can't wait to get him on here and profile a very underappreciated class. Tyler, we're 25 minutes delayed. It's probably not want to drag this out too long, but what's some hot topics we need to touch on before we get Ryan on?
Well, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'd like to break down you pulling in Louisiana. Can you tell us how that was?
Yeah, it was much surprise. Hammond, Louisiana last weekend. I think that facility and that venue in that area, I know it was recognized as a state level event, which there's a lot of great state level events, but that place has a potential for like a Grand National type pull, in my opinion. Great crowd, great environment. People love pulling there. That's just the only time I think there's outdoor pull in Louisiana all year. Track was pretty good for, red dirt, so to speak. But, yeah, it was pretty sweet. They same hospitality you'll see as a Chapel Hill type pull, except they serve crawfish and jambalaya instead of fried chicken.
Okay. Tell us,
good spot.
Tell us how you eat a crawfish. How do you go about it? Is it basically like a miniature lobster, or is there a bit of a process? Because I saw the video of the, it seems how they serve it is they just kind of cover a lineup of tables and they just take a whole pot and walk along and dump all the crawfish out. Tell us the process of consuming one of those bad girls.
Say it's if you married everyone, I would say no matter where you're from is familiar with eating shrimp, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you combine eating a lobster and a shrimp together. So you eat these things like they're lobsters, but you look at them like you eat these things like they're shrimp. You peel and eat shrimp, right? But it looks like a lobster because it has eyes, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a real live animal, not something from the sea, from the water. But yeah, I didn't really eat them because I wasn't there for the activity. But they peel and shuck something, they stick them in, they suck them, and they throw them out. So from what I've seen.
So do you eat the little claws too? Do you peel those open like you do on a lobster, or is it specifically the tail?
I don't know. I think they just eat the tail only, but I don't want to act like I'm an expert because I certainly did not eat crawfish there. But it's like a shrimp and a lobster inbred.
Okay. And you got into a pull-off on Friday, and you guys decided not to pull it off. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was track's 340 foot long. It's not a lot of runoff, and the weather was pretty sketch all weekend. So there was a decision made. Three people made a pull-off, and we decided not to run just to let the show get in. The track, the two-wheel drive class, when it's that first class from my viewing and experience, it seems like the track changes a lot normally. And there was 25 feet further I would say it's the difference of 25 feet in track by the last 8 or 9, the second half of the class versus the first half, because they did start the show, but we had a good number that night. We made the pull-off and tied for first, so it wasn't too bad. And like I said, I don't know what it would take. That place could be a Grand National event if you had the right motivation behind it, so to speak.
Yeah, and off the record before the show started, you were telling me that had you guys pulled that off, you would have covered them by an easy 20 foot. Is that correct?
Oh, I did not say that. No, you're making shit up now. I did not say that. Not at all.
We do have
I will say this because we've all seen and been to a lot of pulls, but seen dirt piles or like hay bales or whatever the end of the track when you run out of track. But this was literally like driving into a golf bunker or a drag race strip where they run off and it was like it was dirt and then it just literally turned into a sand pit. So it was a little different. I don't know if I've ever seen that at a pulling event. So it's I'd be curious if someone took that on with a head full of steam, how they would what would happen to the vehicle. What do you think would happen?
I mean, it sounds similar to like what we see at a lot of NHRA events where, minus the catch fence, they just have a sand box at the end, essentially, or a sand pit, as you say it, instead of a dirt pile. And in all honesty, I almost think I kind of like the thought of that, because I think I'd rather dip my front end of my tractor into a pit of sand as opposed to smashing it into a loose pile of dirt or sand. And in all honesty, if your rear tires were to get into just loose sitting beach sand, you're not going to go anywhere. And if the sled made it that far, you're definitely not going to go anywhere. So that's an interesting concept, but I can see the theory behind it. Chase,
I normally I don't give him, he's not on the air, so I'll give him credit. But like Adams made the comment before about we should put sand piles or something at the end of the tracks for the fans to know when you made a good run. I don't know if I really thought that through until this weekend at this place. I'm like, you know what? Instead of that sand pit there, if they just had a big sand pile, these fans will love that shit if you hit that sand pile, because it's a target or something that shows excitement. Obviously, Louisville does it and some other indoor events, but I think I'll give Adam some credit. I think he's on to something with that, but he's not on here, so he didn't hear me say it.
I'm sure word will get back to him. I see Kurt Jacob checking in, Chase. at the Pullers Championship, the loser of your bet has to wear the Western Kentucky mascot costume. And we can't mention losers of bets without shouting out the fact that this is the 1-year anniversary when you had to make rights on your bet from rest in peace, the Truck Show Tractor Pull, where Chase consumed the 1-chip challenge, which was a real high point in the show for me, as poor Chase, his face just contorted and twisted as he realized he didn't have any milk in his house. And
the funniest part is that we should do this as a giveaway. Tyler sent this to me and it said, Chase, do not open before podcast, and signed his signature there, taped it. I think the story is well documented. I didn't know what I was doing, but
yeah,
it's like most people have trophy cases, and this is my trophy case because it was an iconic night. Happy 1-year anniversary to one of the most interesting nights of my life. So, and speaking of, I think, it's kind of been a pain in the ass start of the show. We apologize again, but pulling season is a month or so away. Our next mini rod outing will be the Pullers Championship for all three of us. Adam, hopefully he's not in the middle of a twister scene right now. I think we were anticipating him having some back connection. But with that being said, we've teased it a lot. We would like you fans in the comments to just throw out some ideas of what the losing bet for the weekend should be. So if you have an idea, we have one right now. The loser wears the Western Kentucky mascot. Shout out in the comments. We got a month or so. We'll have some fun with it. Do an official poll, and then we can watch Tyler most likely lose the bet at the Pullers Championship. Was it May 15th and 16th coming up? Our next event. Hard to believe pulling season's right here upon us. But going to Louisiana last weekend, you definitely gets the blood pumping, and it's that time of year again. So shout out in the comments. We'll probably make some posts, give some ideas of what the losing bet should be, and I think we'll have some fun with it. How do you feel about that?
For sure. I like that thought. And speaking of ideas on what we should do, we just received something in the chat here for the show for our members on it with an idea from Mr. Ryan himself, Ryan DeBroux, puller of the Playin with Fire Super Semi. And I honestly think with our late start to the show, it's time to dive right into the meat and potatoes of our show, which is always our special guest, and bring the man on himself, Mr. Ryan. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, guys.
Ryan, we apologize for Dan Mayer, Miles, and Jeremy Krieger messing with the back-end plugins. We separated ourselves as a premier podcast, but those guys are coming in hot, and I guess they hired an IT company to sabotage us. But apologize for those difficulties. Thank you for joining the show. It's not ideal circumstances, but the big part of our shows are always our guests. So excited to have you on. And is the bad weather headed your way tonight, Ryan? Because you're from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, we don't have much for bad weather, but there's certainly enough going down by Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those checking, we have asked Adam if he's okay. He is okay. It's just, again, the middle of the United States, worst part of the storm that's coming through his town and communities in the center of the bullseye. So we will let you know any updates on Adam, but I'm going to say this is going to be me and Taylor and Ryan tonight, which is fine. We will give updates on Adam. So, Ryan, what part of Michigan are you from exactly? I do know Michigan, but Tyler's from Michigan. It's like one of those things. What city you're from? When you say Michigan, you're from Michigan. I don't know, outside of looking like a mitt, where what is. So explain to us where you're from, what part of the state, and tell us about your co-host there behind your back.
Chase just answered it for you. We are the first community outside the city of Green Bay in Wisconsin.
This idiot. I tried correcting him earlier when he said Michigan, and I said Wisconsin.
Oh, shit. That tells you how prepared I am. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good way to start the show.
What a fool.
Tyler told me you're from Michigan. I'm sorry.
I did not.
Yeah. Tyler said we got a fellow Michigan guy on the show. So Green Bay Packers. So anyone from Green Bay, you're kind of close to Michigan, so it's right there, right?
Yeah. If you're from Florida, where we go on vacation, we're from South Canada.
South Canada.
I like it.
So, So your son there named Chase, I see you all are very selective in your name of your children. Tell him I apologize. Tell him do not send me any hate mail. Tyler, tell me you're from Michigan. I didn't aim to screw that up the way I did.
Well, Chase is named after a fellow local puller. When I started, before we did the national stuff, when we were just doing the statewide stuff, we named Chase, or I requested the name. His name is Chase Ryan DeBroux, and I told the guy that I compete against it was in honor of him because that's what he was doing on the track.
Awesome.
That's awesome. That's got to be exciting to hear that as a fellow competitor. Where did you get your start in the world of pulling, Ryan?
3 miles away from here. Semis, it's, a vehicle that you run for day to day. And, it was drop the trailers, wash the trucks, and go see, who can go do it on the local track in the stock class. And we had a lot of fun. I won that first pull, and that was pretty cool. And you know what? There's another one within an hour of here the next day. Went and did that and did well up there. And that's kind of where the hook set in. And man, that's a lot of pulls, a lot of parts, and a lot of money I go.
And this was done with a truck that you would use from day to day, like outside of tractor pulling, or was this a performance dedicated vehicle?
No, that was my work truck. It used to be. I used to drive that truck during the day, and like I said, we drop the trailers and go pulling. And the stock class can't stay stock for very long, right?
No.
And everyone did a little bit to them, and we kept bringing the levels up. Then it kind of became, I think really only I should drive this thing, at work, so we don't blow it up during the week for the weekend. And then it became no more work, just going down the road because that was the rules. And, once we crossed over that and got into the, that you could put in like a slipper or a pedal clutch, then it was off to the races. Then it was, on a trailer and, became a performance dedicated machine. And that was like 14 years ago. So it's the same truck today. When we switched it over to being performance only, it got a new paint job, the paint job that now, and got all new chrome, and it was converted at that time.
I think you might be the only person I know that has been pulling for, say, 14 years, as you said, and the vehicle you still run today and compete with on a national level is the vehicle you started out pulling with. That is outstanding.
Yeah, the transformation from on the road to today, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It'd be a whole lot more fun just to go straight from working to today and skip the 99 steps in between. But that's part of it, right? That's what makes it part of it.
What's actually left of that original truck? Like just the frame rails, the hood, and the cab, or is there more beyond that?
The frame rails, the hood. We're still running the same style block, but obviously not the same block. The rear, no, not even the rear end. So it's the frame rails and the hood. The cab got switched out. The cab got switched out to a lighter cab a couple years ago, and everything else has been switched. The whole rear end's been switched out because we had to have the right kind of suspension for playing around in the stock class.
Sure.
Without getting too far into it, like a Kenworth 8-bag, that's what it came with. When you torque that, the truck gets 2 inches lower when you torque one of those. And when you torque a Freightliner suspension, when you ever are next to one at a stop sign and the truck driver guns it, the truck stands up and then it drops. He shifts and stands up. Well, my competitors were going up and I was going down, and that ain't good. We cut it all out, changed it, switched it out, and then sure enough, the next year we had to lock out our rear ends, and it made that all a moot point anyway. So,
yeah, Ryan, I have a question I have that from a Grand National and Champions Tour level classes, this is my opinion or my speculation. I would say that a super stock semi class is the closest to having a pulling vehicle where it could be street legal, so to speak. What would the process, like if you if you wanted to take you would never do this, but just out of curiosity, if you wanted to make that where you could have it as a licensed truck, is there anything keeping you from that? Like obviously a mini rod, you probably would not be able to license that thing. A four-wheel drive truck, I don't know if that would be street legal or not, like a modified four-wheel drive or super stock diesel. But like if you show up to your local sheriff's office and said, I wanted to license this, would there be anything keeping you from it as far as you know?
Well, just the small DOT issues like brakes, lights, all that stuff. And I mean, hell, it burns 77 gallons of fuel in the mile. So even if I did all that work, I'm not going to get very far.
Yeah, so it's obviously would not be good for a business model, but I just, from a fan standpoint, how easy it would be to convert those, because from the visual part of it, it looks like a semi. Like it looks like a badass tricked out semi. Obviously, we know that's not what's in it, but it's always a question I've had regarding semis.
So like even the guys that do the drag race, and the biggest thing that keeps us from being able to do that is we lock out our rear axle on the suspension. No other class has two drive axles right next to each other. Four-wheel drives, yes, they have two drive axles, but they're separated. It's a little bit different. So our rear axle, according to our rules, can't move up or down. So we lock that out. And then the front drive axle, we're allowed to push down on it. The rules state that we're supposed to keep the rear axle touching the ground during competition. But the other thing that wouldn't work out very well is our transmission. Our transmission is, from Profab. It's got 4 pulling gears in it, and it's not set up to, go slow like in the pits. That's why I'm really glad they pull us around. That and the clutch is so darn heavy on those things in order to handle all that torque that if you had to slip your clutch through the pits, I have a pedal style clutch. I mean, my leg would be shaking. I don't want to say what, but my leg would be shaking before I got very far. So the 4 gears we have, they're all pulling gears. It wouldn't work for like drag racing or anything like that.
What kind of gears do you run that thing, Ron?
What kind of gear ratios? I'm not going to talk about, but I'm
Chase has always tried to figure out gear. Chase has always tried to figure out gear ratios.
I'm all happy to say that it comes from Profab. Larry and Lisa do a great job, and they're also, in this other state of Michigan for you.
I'm really sorry, Adam. You missed it. Tyler, while you were gone, said this. Ryan's from Michigan.
I never said that.
He says it. He says,
Let's face it, guys.
I say Michigan twice. He said, "Dude, I'm from Wisconsin." I'm like, "Oh yeah." Actually, Tyler.
Let's face it, guys. This has been a touch and go on one of the worst episodes, and not because of our great guest. It's because of a few things. But you're not going to hear too much from me. Sorry about that, Ryan. But you are not from Michigan. I can tell you that.
Adam,
Ryan, I want a fair question. Hang on, this is a fair question to ask in terms of you don't have to tell us what gear ratio, but you have 4 speeds. Like how much separation is between each gear? Like in a common, you jump around like 5 gear ratios at a time, or like?
No, we're always in the high gear. We gotta change it. We're in the high gear. We gotta, inside Louisville for the truck show, that's totally different. So that's like the only thing that holds us back from changing stuff. But that's like next week's project is to mess around with the gear ratios. So
are they like one turn apart, or like a couple turns, or half a turn?
1 1/4 apart, something like that.
See, we got some info. Didn't know that. So I don't know if Adam or Tyler agree with this. Like with a mini rod, a half a turn is a big change from what I've seen. So it's good. A turn and a quarter. We got a little info from you. I'm sure your competitors are taking note.
Well, I'm just excited to be able to mess around with gear ratios again. I mean, for the last almost 2 years, we've tore stuff up every weekend. It's not been a very durable setup. And that's kind of how this goes. There's not a lot of answers at this level. We run an electronic engine, and there's nobody else at this level doing that. And when you cross those problems, or when you come under those problems, you can't buy the answer. You can't order the answer. You got to sometimes figure it pretty much out. And I'm not saying I figure all those problems out. We have great people we work with, but you have to figure out that problem and get an answer or invent an answer. So I'm just glad that we can finally get past, because it doesn't pay to mess around with gear ratios if you're still tearing up your engine. You might as well fix. You guys know how it works. You know, you can't change 5 things on a weekend and have any kind of maybe you do, I don't know, but I don't think you can.
No. If anyone says they do, they're lying to you.
Yeah. So
I would agree. I
was just excited to be able to go back to messing around with gear ratios and kind of put the motor behind us.
So when you say putting the motor behind you, I mean, when you go into a season and everything's fresh, how many passes do you bank on getting out of that engine before it has to be torn down in an ideal scenario where nothing comes apart?
I wish you could see Crystal's face right now.
At least she didn't say you're from Michigan.
Man, for the last 2 years, it hasn't made it out of a weekend.
No kidding.
It's been terrible.
Man, how do you keep a wife happy when you have to dedicate that much time to pulling apart your motor all the time? What's your secret, Ryan? Help us guys out here.
I can't tell you how.
It's called true love.
Yeah, I will tell you that Crystal is a very important part of this team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you say 77 gallons of fuel you would use in a mile, for the people out there, how many gallons of fuel do you use in one pass down the track?
It's just under 5 gallons. Now, I know some of those alcohol motors, that they blast more fuel into their motors and stuff. But this is, high compression diesel, at a precise amount of time, a prescribed amount. It's very dedicated and at super high pressures. So we're injecting fuel, over 28,000 PSI. We're injecting fuel faster than if Chase and Tyler each had 2 gallons of milk and you tipped your gallons upside down. Once I have the chain tight and I'm actually got the turbo spooled up and I'm actually moving, if you guys both took your jugs and tipped them over, I'll have burned your 4 gallons plus one of Adam's faster than you guys can dump it out. So
wow.
Now I know the alcohol guys pound a ton of fuel, the unlimiteds and even your mini rods, right? It's the same thing. You guys pound a ton of fuel. This is shot in like a water jet in each cylinder. So
yeah, that is more impressive because, I mean, our fuel systems are kind of stupid in the fact that, a lot of people don't realize they're just, even when the intake valve is closed, we're just blindly dumping fuel everywhere in there. And it just looks like somebody's spraying a garden nozzle around in our intake. Like, yeah, here, have a little here and have a little here. You're actually precisely waiting for the moment, boom, shooting in a blast of fuel. Like the precision behind that and the timing behind it, that's, from a mechanical standpoint, that's kind of fathomable or unfathomable to think about that sort of fuel usage that precisely.
Yeah, I mean, the fuel pumps, they're just short of 200 horsepower to drive the fuel system. You guys have blowers and stuff. We have the turbo, but yeah, it's just it's a lot of stuff through a small amount of area and at a very precise time. What's cool about electronic is you can do anything. What's terrible about electronic is you can do anything. When you grab your laptop and you want to delete Windows, it asks you 3 times, "Hey, dummy, do you really want to do this?" Right? And on our fuel system, you punch it in, it'll take it. It doesn't care. But man alive, you gotta deal with the answer.
So mechanical fuel injection. As mechanical fuel injection guys, when we sit here and we're like, oh, if we had EFI, our lives would get easier and less things would go wrong. You've been on the other side of it. How do you feel electronic compared to mechanical? And is the grass greener on the other side?
We were always electronic. And, we were always that. And it was not the easiest way to go. And, we used to be unit injectors, and that program, I literally was the only person on the planet that knew what the laptop said. That was 100%, my success and my failure. We went to a common rail setup now, and we're blessed to work with, S&S, and they've been great. Their computer system talks like a little bit different language. And when you're paying the bills, it's better for me to learn their system than for them to learn my system. And when we went to the common rail setup, we got hooked up with them. It's their system, it's their system, their programming. They do a lot of stuff with drag racing. Drag racing is awesome, but it's different. I'm not even talking the semi-drag racing, which they do a lot with that too. But the funny car, the big long, what are those things, like a Top Fuel kind of car, or the diesel engine. They got all kinds of stuff. And what is so impressive is working with them. I mean, they can be literally on my laptop hooked to my motor, and we're talking on the phone. And when we did our first startup, we didn't know where any of the parameters were or nothing. They were able to get it started and running, from just online. So, but at the same token, they can they'll take care of it and do like the programming, the whatever. But it's my ideas, because I'm stuck with the bill. If we try something and it launches everything out of it and it pukes its guts out, it's not like it's them and us. It's just me. So I get to pick whatever I want for fuel. I get to pick whatever I want for timing and delivery and pressures and all that stuff. So that's why it's awesome, and it's super frustrating at the same time. When you figure something out, you're like, man, why the hell didn't I figure this out last year? But just the way it works. So
I'm being educated. Is the super semi class the only one that allows EFI at the national circuit? I didn't even know that there was a class that allowed that.
Yeah,
on a pulling standpoint.
I think diesel super stock 4-wheel drive, I think you can have it in there if you wanted. Cummins Killer tried it for a while. They were going super high RPMs, like 8,600 RPMs or something. They were cranking. And then that's another thing, being the first to do something is awesome, and it's also hell, so, but there's some other classes that allow it. So
really, I didn't think that was allowed at all. But does everyone in that class run EFI in your class?
No, I'm the only one at this level. And there was a truck last year, Temptation or Temperamental. Chris Jeffries had it from New York. It was an orange and blue truck. He ran the NTPA series with us. That truck also had electronic fuel injection. So,
got it.
So
I didn't know that.
In the flammable diesel 4x4 truck, do you guys run electronic fuel injection in that?
We really thought about it. That's been my deal since day one. It's been you want to call it success, and it's been my prison sentence all in one. But I don't have the time to go pound through two different vehicles trying to figure something out. And it would have been, I didn't want to have, because it's Marshall drives it now, and then next year Blake will be able to drive it. And I just can't have, I didn't want to risk with them, having a vehicle that we were trying to figure out. I needed, that's a driver's class. That class is fun. The semi, we wind up and we get going, and we're locked into the track, and your motor plays an enormous part. Plus your chassis setup plays an important part. The semi or the 4-wheel drive diesel super stocks, those guys all have more power than they have traction, and that's a driver's class. And what's awesome is we purchased a Scheid motor from them. Got a little sporty going on there by Adam. We were able to purchase a Scheid motor and put it in the truck. We bought a rolling chassis from somebody, and then I knew it was just my kids trying to learn how to do the driver's class, how to figure out to read the track, how to roll on the power, when's the right time, and that they weren't going to be beating their heads against how the engine reacted, how the power came onto the engine. I needed them to be on the same token, because I'll tell you that is a super cool class. All of those competitors I consider friends of mine, and from way before we ever joined them. And when we were going to join another class, I was like, man, that's going to be it. And Marshall agreed 100%. He's friends with a lot of them too. And, those guys, and we can tell a story about that too. When Marshall first tried down the track, I mean, that class truly takes care of us to get us down the track, to give us some pointers. I'm not going to say they're going to give us pointers for life, but, they got us in the right direction. And I can't say how much I appreciate that. So that, we chose not to go, not to say we never would, but it's like, boy, it's just too many new things going on. And I just didn't want them to struggle at all because of that decision also. Right?
Sure.
Yeah. The pains that you had with your electronic version, and you're like, you know what? I can't put this burden on my children right out of the gate, or they may walk away from it.
Right.
And we've talked a lot about the semi and playing with fire, which is obviously how you've made your name as a puller, but haven't given enough probably shout out to your all's new classes. You mentioned the super stock diesel 4-wheel drive. You mentioned a couple of names, Marshall. I just saw Chase on the background who gave me the Michigan middle finger. And talk about your family and the crew, your wife, those that make your team go, because that's obviously a big part of this new endeavor. So this is your platform. Let's talk about who all is involved with the team.
Yeah, so you see him pictured there. I mean, my wife, Crystal, I mean, I couldn't ask for a better wife, better woman to do this with. This is awesome. Her dedication and her pride, and she's also sitting right next to me. But
you would say this regardless. So.
But she's so important to taking care of this. And now with the second vehicle, she's the pilot of the second vehicle going down the road. And
wow!
I can't say I can name 50 other wives that are willing to drive a 45-foot motor coach with a 36-foot trailer behind it. And we have to pound through Chicago no matter where we go. Maybe Hutchinson, we get to go straight across, but we got to visit Chicago often. Almost every trip. So. I will tell you, she's not doing that for me though. She's doing that for her boys. So she can say whatever she wants. I'm not going to listen to it. But yeah, Crystal's my wife, and then I got a 17-year-old son, Marshall, 15-year-old Blake, and then 12-year-old Chase. And so it's Crystal and I and the three boys. And three awesome. Boys is awesome. It's a lot of smash, but three boys is awesome. And we do farming back here, do custom work. So it's just awesome to be able to spend all that time, with my kids. And then, in the shop, he doesn't come on the road very often with us. I've got Brad Geisel, my mechanic. Playing with fire it's a cool deal. It's Brad taking care of the nuts and the bolts and the heavy lifting and making that, engine just picture perfect, beautiful every time. I get to do the dreaming for the power, the horsepower, the timing, what ideas we're going to go with. But Brad builds that engine. And for the last 2 years, he's got to rebuild it starting Monday morning every time. So, I take it for the weekend and we burn up some stuff and come back and, Jack Kilmeyer was working one weekend on his multi-engine mod, and I don't have anything with spark plugs. I have a weed eater, a Harley that I don't ride, and a lawn. Everything else is diesel. And those guys are working, and they pop the stuff off. They pop their head off, and I couldn't believe it that they just grabbed the head and pulled it off. And I said, "Don't you ever show Brad that you can lift a head by hand, and you don't need a crane and all this other bullshit that we got to deal with." And And the way the motor was, the last so many years, you couldn't even roll bearings in it. It had to come out of the truck. So every Monday, that motor was coming out of the truck to do every kind of bit of work to it. So to say that got old was probably an understatement a year ago. But that was the year we went after the championships, right? So then it was didn't hurt so much. But last year, man, that just sucked. So that's the core of the team. Our team's called Playin with Fire. Myself, Brad, the guy that painted the truck, the guy that does all the stainless steel welding on the truck, the guy that did the 120 volt wiring system on the truck. We're all firemen. We're all paid on-call firemen. So years and years and years ago, we needed a name. We used to shoot fire out of the stack, and we couldn't think of a name. And Crystal came, said, "What about Playin with Fire?" And I'm like, that works for 3 different reasons. And we're trying to get 10 times what these parts are made out of, the drive line and the block. Like, we are literally playing with fire all the time. So that was how that started. That was the key to it. So that was a long time ago.
Yes, and you mentioned the stainless, the paint on that thing. We got a shout out to anybody listening to this to make a point to make it over to your pit and check that thing out, because even though you talk about how much mechanical work you do on the motor on that thing, I mean, it's one thing to show how nice it is in a picture, but to see it up close in person, I mean, the paint's awesome. As a stainless fabricator myself, I mean, the welding is phenomenal on it, and that thing is always looking tip-top and a great representation of the sport and the class for sure. Bill Voorhees checking in with a comment. Would you like to see recast blocks in your class? Thoughts on that? You're thinking.
Yeah.
We were told a couple of things not to ask about. That was not one of them. I'm kidding.
Well, no, but
I'm kidding.
Tell us the pros and cons for those people that don't even know. What does
recast block mean? Because I don't know. So take us through some history here, and then you can comment if you want to comment.
I mean, I have more experience of like recast heads than like the tractors. I mean, I know as long as it meets OEM, the outside box measurements, as long as it meets it'll bolt up to a stock block, or if a block will, a stock head will bolt to it. Recast, they just make it out of a different kind of metal. They make it out of, compacted graphite or whatever that, CGI. It has some better properties than what, they're not trying to make, 1 million blocks go 3 million miles, right? We're looking for a product that can handle bigger cylinder pressures and stuff like that. So, that's what the recast stuff is. We have to run a block that is the standard measurements. It can swing a standard crank. Our head cannot be billet. We can run recast style heads, but we can't run a billet head. So, and then we are allowed 2 pressure stages. So that would be your triples or like 4 turbos. We personally run a big single, big Weimer. You had Jim on the show a couple of meetings ago. Those guys are awesome. Those guys are a lot of fun. Got a tiny yard. If you go there with a hauler, you're going to be all about onto the road with your trailer. I know this, but those are
they make up for it with big turbos though.
Yeah, those guys are great guys. And then the machine shop, Steven's machine shop, is 30 feet away, right next door. So they run it as 2 separate buildings. But so as far as rules, we're allowed to have 2 pressure stages, and then the rest of it is pretty much. And then we have to run a DOT casing on our tire, so we can run retreads or whatever, but we can't literally like cut our tires or anything like that. We have to run a DOT style casing. So
obviously,
safety. So
just hearing that, obviously a recast block at the surface would say, hey, we're all going to get parts that are going to last longer. which means we can possibly push them harder, which means maybe we can make more power. But it's obviously going to increase the entry level to that class, which I would imagine is why people are not for it. So being Mr. Ryan, would you be a fan of recast blocks being allowed?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with them because durability is an enormous problem. So if we can get to something that's more durable, I'm okay with it. You know, you guys have all seen the movie or the video of Jack Kilmeyer tossing his cookies, you know,
out the
out
front.
You saw like Black Sheep on the PPL side, you know, they were in Wisconsin and Ellsworth. They tossed their stuff on the ground. I'm not talking down to nobody. I think that's like their second time of busting their block. Everybody else, I think, at our level has basically broken a block except for us. Knock on wood, okay? But we also, in electronic, we have a newer block. We have a newer style. And in the mechanical world, they all break their block at the valve, at the camshaft. When they toss the top half off, you see the camshaft sitting there. And then the first electronic motor still had a hole in the block for where the camshaft used to be. And then when they went to the new style motors, like what we have, they went to a higher cylinder compression from the factory, and they pulled that hole out. They put in a solid piece, and they made it a little bit stronger. Now, since then, that's not enough. We still run last year we had a tie-down system that you saw. It's in a lot of pictures where we have the two plates and then all the bars on the side. They're holding the party inside. So,
yes, I've seen those. It's effectively a large flange of metal on the top of the block and the bottom of the block. And you're essentially just making a sandwich with these two plates or girdles, if you will, with the block in the center. And you're just cranking that thing down, trying to tell the block, listen, do not blow your top half off of the bottom half. Stay in one piece.
Yeah, when you put one of those on, you have to torque it all up, and then you've got to get it line board again just to make sure that any unhappiness, you want to see something ugly, you know what it looks like when you see like a deer skull that's got, been dipped and it's just the skull. You see the eye cavity, the nasal cavity. But when you machine off the top of a cat block, you get rid of where everything is pretty and nice and for your liners to sit in. Well, now you have oil areas, you have coolant areas, and you have, crankcase areas that are no longer capped off by the nice factory top. So it's the ugliest sin. And, when you have a mechanic that used to build million-mile motors all the time, and then you look at them and I'm like, well, I think we're just going to freaking RTV it and go. His brain like locks up. And, we seal that all off. That big plate comes on, our liner sits in that, and then the whole motor should be happy, and that's the goal. We always talk to truck drivers at the show. You guys know that I always have my hood up. You guys know that I'm always out there talking to people, and it's one of the fringe benefits of being the end of the show. You guys might have to get scaled in. You guys might have to be in the hot pits for the national anthem. When the national anthem hits, I have not eaten and I have not showered. I have so much time. So I get a chance to talk to those fans. They go inside, national anthem happens. I go take a shower, and then, we'll eat. And then I can finally get maybe over to the scale. So, I have just a different, absolutely different setup than you guys do before, your pregame.
It's a very relatable class. Like, people can relate to what, and that goes back to what I said. It's like the most likely vehicle to be licensed. If you had to, I guess, give someone that category. I have a question, and like, again, this is a big educational piece for me and pulling fans, I think, probably as a whole. Explain, so like, when I see semi pulling, I just see semis, but there's obviously different levels of it, depending on where you go. I've seen the Grand National level, and there's pro stock, there's street. Like, can you explain the different semi classes that we may see pulling, and the difference in what those vehicles are versus one another?
So going the top down is the easiest way. So the Grand National or the Champions Tour stuff for PPL, that's one thing that's got to get updated. So like Pro Stock used to be what people called a single turbo semi. And then the Champions Tour or the NTPA stuff, that was the guys that had multiples. And today there's just a handful. There's one or two that are running multiple chargers right now because chargers have made,
Progress.
Yeah. And I'm going to lie to you. What's a Pro Stock? 680 cubes, right? Something like that.
Adam would know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Sounds about
What's
right.
that? What's
What's
that?
a Pro Stock
Cubes is a
cubic
Pro
inch?
Stock?
680.
Yeah, we're like 1,100 something. I mean, we're huge. So back in the day, they didn't have chargers big enough to occupy that kind of space. So you had to go to multiples, and you had to go to, a couple of them. Like Jack Kilmer used to run 4. He had 2 turbos stacked in compound just to run 3 cylinders. So he would have 4 chargers total. And today, we've got these big ass Weimers that we can run, and we get enough power off for that. So there's really, because sometimes I'll see like, well, that's just a Pro Stock semi. I don't care. Yeah, it's different than what it used to be. So that's the top level. Then going down, the other biggest class is most places across America, there's like a 4-1 class. And that's what I used to be when I did the state tournament. And I will tell you that I had a lot of fun doing that, and I didn't have to fix it every day. So there's also like a big area in Pennsylvania that runs like a 3.6 turbo. Those guys can still get by driving them down the road. They've got to behave, because if they would put it in a gear and then and put it down, they'll just make day into night with smoke. But if they behave, they can pretty much stay under the radar and they can get somewhere. Those are awesome classes. And out there, like one of my friends, Mike Adams, is out that way. I mean, those guys might pull 2, 3, 4 times in a week. So you cannot be broke down and wrenching constantly on those guys. But they put on a hell of a show. Some of those classes have a longer hitch, and they definitely have a higher hitch. Because they're still pulling off of like a fifth wheel, and that does a lot for their traction. So
When you talk,
sorry, Tyler, there is a big distinction, but it's a similar distinction similar to a Pro Stock class, basically by turbo size, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep, and then they match it. Like those guys are more like 1-to-1 with their tires and traction. They're not necessarily spinning and slipping going down the track the whole way. They're locked in. And then when they get to the end of the track, a sled's made to upset you. I mean, it no matter what class it is. And when that pan hits, or when that all those weights we have, when they hit the front, it is like getting rear-ended on the highway.
Yeah.
We get slammed to the back. My head literally, and I know it's coming, my head literally hits the back. And then 1,001, 1,002, and we're going forward, because now I'm spinning. We're not hooked in no more. And, Von's going to win. Von always wins. I don't give a shit who you are. He always wins. So,
Will those guys share what? Will those the 4-1s, those other guys, will they share their gear ratios if we ever ask them?
Probably.
I'm kidding. It's a loaded question. You ought to answer.
They might still be running the 18-speed, transmissions. So,
gotcha.
I can tell you what absolutely will not work, though. If you get out of the low side, so when you drive your truck, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you hit the front button and you go back up to the higher side. If you try pulling in that high side, you have a big gear against a little gear. And I did that twice to try to win. And that's two shafts in that transmission. And I blew my whole transmission case in half this way. And that one put it in like 23, 24 pieces. It shattered like glass. And then the other time, it's honestly still the poster for the Brown County Fair, my home county. We put it in that gear, and we went, and the gears are cut on an angle. It shot the second shaft out the back of the transmission. That's through two cast iron walls. That gear said, "I am not sticking around for this." So
the high and low, what gears are we talking, or is that still?
It's like an 18 speed, so whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you get up into the high side. So back up towards the radio. on the high side. That gear.
But what does that mean? I know high and low, Ryan. You're a really nice guy. What's those numbers?
You're
I don't know
talking
those
overall.
no more. Overall, I don't know those overall numbers, but I know we're.
We're gonna break you before this show's over. And just for the record, the Brown County Fair is in Wisconsin, not Michigan, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler,
Yeah,
get that right.
No shit, Chase. So when you talk earlier about locking out the suspension, I believe that in the last couple of years that was a rule change difference that came.
That's always been the rule.
That's always been that way. Okay, I thought that there was a recent rule change in the semi class that there was some discrepancies about. No, okay. Well, I'm just going to say
that's not about the rule I talked about. It's about the front axle getting pushed down.
That was the rule change.
That's the proposed rule change for 26.
Can we talk more about this?
Yeah, tell us about that.
I'm going to be as political as I.
No. This is the No Practice podcast. Yeah. You can't practice. You can't come scripted. We just don't talk about religion and politics. So just go ahead.
So it was proposed, and I don't know by who, that we weren't going to be able to push down our front axle, that we're going to have to lock it out. And the challenge is that, myself and Brian Elthorpe, we were on the committee. Neither one of us was going to be in the Enderle last year. So we went out to the Enderle just to be sure that, we were there for the rule stuff and to do our job. And there was nothing brought up about it. And then after on the off season, it was brought up about that we weren't going to be able to push our front axle down. We're going to have to go to a set. We got some hail.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell.
Adam interrupting here with what looks like a golf ball sized hail. That looks quite impressive.
Yeah. Adam, it was really juicy before the oh hell.
Sorry
moment.
about that.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We
safe,
got a few things going on. We got a few things going on here. We're showing some. It's hard to tell. There's a decent amount of hail going on there.
Okay. Not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty juicy. So I don't know. We had some serious stuff move through here, and this is only the first line. I see another line's coming after this. I think some sort of a tornado just kind of was just to the south of us just a little bit, right? Or at least they said. I don't know. We're in the basement here trying to figure it out. And, absolutely insane. I'm sorry I'm missing the show, guys.
No, you're good. You're good. Ryan, we normally don't have natural weather updates to coincide with guests, but this is just a unique show for a unique guy. And Adam, I hope they serve beer in hell.
No, so I want to get to this. I apologize. I've been out of the loop. Maybe I've missed something. This is something I kind of wanted to talk to Ryan about. So it's been a couple years ago at Toma, Wisconsin, right?
Adam, hang on before you jump on, because this is deserving. You'll be proud of this. Ryan was challenging a new rules update and was in the climax of it, and you hop back on of what?
Yeah.
Really?
Hang on a minute.
Go ahead.
Ryan was in the middle.
No. Some things are big,
in the middle of saying how well represented he felt at his rules meeting.
He was calling people out by the first name and just saying, "I'm going to be politically correct."
A special trip to the Enderle for his rules meeting as his chosen individual. He said, in my busy life, I'm going to set aside the time and do my part, the job I have been tasked with, and traverse to the Enderle for said meeting. And Ryan, you were just breaking down the results of said meeting.
Let's hear
Take it away, sir.
Adam, you're going to hear it. Climax.
I want to hear it.
Man, Tyler, you take excellent notes.
All right, hey, Adam, hold that thought for 1 second.
Yeah, both of you.
We're going to get to Adam. We're going to get to Adam's. We'll get to Adam's thing, but we went out there and they wanted to make it that we had to go to a preset measurement with our front axles, and then NTPA, PPL, and Ohio all agreed to keep them the same. And man, did I get the phone calls! I got the phone calls from everybody. You guys know that we historically have pulled as much as we possibly could with PPL and NTPA. So we are a common link for both of those organizations. And then Ohio, friends of mine from Ohio called out, and and everyone in the semi class was definitely nervous because I think the idea was to make it, I don't want to say, there was points about being fair and competition wise. And then there also was ideas proposed to me that they thought it was going to make it safer so we didn't have as much rear ends problems. And the flip of that is true. The rear ends are going to be very, 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 they're going to be subject to a ton of damage. When we go down the track, if I see the first guy go bouncing like a bunny down the track, I can make adjustments, not to make it or, changing my hitch height or nothing, but I can make adjustments to my axles of either when or how far I push that front axle. And, we have so much weight out front, and we don't want weight out front. You play with that front axle in order to get traction. And if they take that away from us, that was going to be a big, big issue with a lot of people about how durable, and then, basically make us subjected to blowing rear ends out of the trucks. So that was a big concern. It's a rule proposed for 26. The first group to put the rules through, like on the calendar year, was Ohio, and Ohio didn't put it through. So I'm hoping it either waits or gets dropped. We need to have way more conversations about that. And, there's lots of parties involved. There's the sled association. There's the rules guys, the safety guys, the pullers themselves, And one thing that frustrated me, and it's not a problem right now, but the one thing that frustrated me with like PPL and NTPA, you guys as mini rod pullers, you don't have any input on the semi-rule classes because, you don't know our class, or vice versa. I don't have a dog in the fight for your rules, right? Because I absolutely have zero freaking desire to jump on one of them things. In Ohio, I think it's a little bit different. I think they all vote as a group on all the rules. So that's one thing that made me real nervous, especially seeing as if they were the first one on the calendar to make the rules, that we might have to be subject to following them. So there needs to be more conversations. That's what I'm, pushing for, is that we all get together. It's not the way to put a rule together is after the Enderle and before the spring. We got all summer where we're at some big events. We should have some conversations there. So that's my opinion on that.
So basically what you're saying is they should not implement the rule, correct?
There isn't any semi guys that want to put it forward. So
really? So where do you think the origin of this rule comes from? Just safety?
No, so there's some semi guys that I've talked to for years, and it's really not a problem on the NTPA circuit, and I don't think it's really a problem on the PPL circuit. But there's been concern of some sleds acting up in the other circuit, the third circuit, and I'm not a sled guy. I don't know how to set them up. I don't know how to run them. But I know that there's been in the past a lot of, and I'm saying this with respect to everybody, but like if the sled had to put bigger grousers on in order to stop the semi class, that the other classes have to struggle with that big aggressive setting. If they change the grousers or something. Well, if you're a guy in a truck class or a tractor class and your sled is rough on you or bounces or it doesn't give you that nice launch and that nice stop, and they say that it's based because they got to try to stop these big rigs. Well, I'm not going to be a big rig fan as far as the rules go, right? And I will say on the record that I have zero problems with how the PPL sleds operate because I get to hook to them often. They do a good job. Von Bauer's sleds, I'm absolutely happy with those. We hook to them all the time. They handle us. They put on a great show, let us get rolling. They stop us. It's doing the full ball of wax just like they're supposed to. I have no experience with the Ohio sleds or anything like that. And maybe I've been told 100%, an inaccurate story, but that was where some of that basis came from. So I can't say I blame somebody if, that we have some, kind of a crazy sled ride and it's based on, a different class's requirements, but I don't know what they're pulling. They might not even be pulling trucks with built-in hitches. They might be pulling with semis that are, on those other classes with the fifth wheel hitches. Well, they definitely can, take away a little bit. They're not going to want to, but, it's just not. You can't put all the semis in the same mold as far as traction and sled.
Is the
settings.
OSTPA semi-class the same as the Champion Sword Grand National one?
Some of it is, some of it's not.
So it's not apples to apples.
And those, well, some of it is though, and those guys have a great thing. I mean, they can, a lot of them stay within 2 or 3 miles or 2 or 3 hours of home, and they don't have to go pound out to, for me, going east is the big trip. For a lot of those guys in Ohio, coming out by me, Toma, Hutchinson, Rockwell, those are all big rides for those guys. And honestly, you have to be set up like, in your personal life, you have to, your family, your job, your work schedule, that all has to match. So it's a lot of, it's just different. That's what made me nervous about one set of rules across the board and who can influence the rules.
It's funny you give that opinion on the one set of rules, because as I've gotten older, I guess I'm still really young, Ryan, but I've always just thought like maybe all these organizations just get together once a year and get a hotel, rent out, give them some free drinks, and just make rules that everyone follows for classes. But I think there's a couple parties that would not want. I think that just makes too much sense for a couple parties. But why would we not? There's other motorsports that do the same thing. And it's pretty simple. They're all just trying to cover their ass. They're all just trying to meet what their insurance wants. So why the hell do we not do that in pulling? I don't know, but love to get y'all's feedback on that.
Well, Chase, you're right. I guess I got to expand a little bit more. That's what we were frustrated with. Every group was frustrated because the NTPA guys and the PPL guys and the Ohio guys all of a sudden all read on Facebook at the same time that, hey, we're all going to have the same rules. Okay, but how come we're not talking about it? None of the stuff was brought up at the Enderle. That's the problem. You can't leave that pull and then all of a sudden wake up one day and open up Facebook and be like, yes, they all should agree so that we can go. There's not enough semis to split up, right? Yeah. We've got to be able to interchange. So I'm not fighting that. But we all have to be part of the conversation. If you're going to make the rules the same, then we all have to be part of the conversation the same.
Just make if there was this isn't going to happen, but in a wishful world of fixing pulling's problems that this podcast tries to do, they should all just get together 1 week a year. Hell, we would pay for the drinks at the bar if they all just get together and make the rules. And these are rules. Don't throw the other group on the bus, and y'all got to abide by them. How much easier would that be? But you can't get everybody to get along. I'd say majority would want it to, but I think some would just want to make things complicated. But that's my opinion on this podcast.
Right. Yeah.
And to be clear, the reason we reference the Enderle over and over, for those of you that don't know, is every year there is kind of a, how would you word it, Ryan, rules discussion, rules meeting, and somewhat of an open format, yes?
Yeah. I mean, you have your class meeting, where you're talking to your class, other people in your class. We also, like as a rep, you have, everyone that's not coming, they've chewed your ear off when you're headed to it, so they want to be represented. And it's your chance to talk as a group, and it's your chance to talk to the board and, with the safety guys in there. And, I don't disagree that it's a good setup. It just was frustrating to all of a sudden not have the same topics, of what we were talking about and what's being presented.
Yeah.
I got a real question for you, Ryan, because I think I was around at Toma here a few years back. This is what I was going to kind of bring up. I think you guys were last class like normal. You had traveled between, I believe, Hutchinson, Minnesota and Toma, Wisconsin, and we're out for 2 weeks. Toma, like always, weather threatens every session of pulling that they have. You guys get to run your first hook, and you go out and you make a 365-foot pass, give or take, right? I believe it was. Yeah. Okay, and how many trucks were in the class? 9, 7, something like that? 7. No. I think there were 7.
5, 6,
there was
7, something like
less than 10, okay? I think it was 7, to be honest with you. So Ryan makes his pass, takes it like normal. He gets back to the trailer, and you usually park down there towards the end. And And I think when I went back there and I said something to you, I just got a drink or something. I maybe had a few too many cocktails or whatever.
No way. I don't
Came
believe
back
that.
and I was like,
You're in the
I was like,
no such thing as.
I said, you're not going to believe this. It's like, what? I said, they reset the sled. And he's like, what? It's like, there's like 5 or 7 trucks here. And I went 365 feet and they reset the sled. Now, Toma has about 450 feet that they could drag something. And something was, I think I maybe made a trick to the starting line, maybe ill-advised to do it, but I felt like it needed to be said. Said something like, why in the hell did they reset the sled? And he says, well, one of the trucks is going to go further than that. And I'm like, he just made a killer pass, dude. The guy's been sitting here for a week and a half. He's been out with his family a week and a half in a points race, comes here, makes a really good pass. You reset the sled on him. He can't come back. There's no way he can come back. I mean, you could, but, I mean, you're really asking to tear stuff up. There's 5 to 7 trucks in the class. You reset. What was the furthest distance you can go? Even if you were getting beat by the said truck by 20 feet, it still would have only been 380. And we're going, what's going on here? Completely ruined your the beginning of the season.
Year, you mean?
What's that?
Yeah. You mean?
Yeah.
my
Oh,
year
yeah.
is
No.
what
And
you meant
then
to say.
honestly, if you think about it after that, like for you, it seemed like after that, like then other things started to happen too. But I mean, wouldn't you say mandatory unless it's like completely unsafe, especially at a pull like that? Like there's 5 or 7 trucks there. Can't be resetting the sled, or you're given X amount of points for, whatever. I mean, I thought that was complete. Honestly, I'm going to say it. I thought it was complete horseshit. And here's a guy who's sat there for a week and a half because you got to get to Toma early to get a good parking spot. And who knows, you may not even get to run the next session. The one time you're out the money, you're out the points. I mean, you're out everything. And I think that just enrages people, but nobody ever sees it. The fans don't see it. And that's where I get kind of frustrated. So maybe there's a rule put in place to where these guys, hey, there's a reset like that. We're either getting points, you're getting third place points, whatever you want to say, just to keep you in the realm instead of dropping you completely out for the year right at the beginning of the season. It really gives up. And then you got 5 trucks, 7 trucks that show up. Maybe I just don't need to go to the next pool because I'm already out of it. What do you do? So maybe give us a little insight on that if you don't mind.
Well, first off, most notably, your show is named wrong. I mean, it should be No Gloves Podcast because you guys are tearing all the freaking gloves off.
Right.
And I know you have a couple more ideas in the weeds that you're probably going to bring up. They're going to pull the rest of the gloves off. So,
shout out to Dan Mayer, Jamie Krieger, and Miles for pulling for messing with our IT tonight. We normally have a good show, but they were the gremlins. I have to say that as much as I can, but yeah, you're right, Ron. Carry on.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got to the end of the track, and the guy's like, kick-ass pass, and he's like, you're taking that unless you're an idiot. And I said, yeah, I'm taking it. And we get right outside. The tractor pulls us out. Our pits is 2 trailers away from the exit.
Fan favorite.
We've been there for years, right by the donuts. So who the hell's not been by the donut guy? And park my truck, get out of the fire suit, get some comfortable clothes on, and grab my laptop, do a download, looking at my numbers, and go inside the stands, and then find out that they reset the damn sled. We didn't even know. We heard it on the announcers. They're looking for Ryan DeBroux. I'm like,
You're like, wait a minute.
what are they talking about? I walked down to the fence, and the guy's there with the headphones on after I talked to Adam, and I'm like, tell me Adam's just drunk. This is
Sure.
The first part was true.
I wasn't lying.
I mean, Adam pulled like an hour and a half ago. Tell me he's just freaking shot. And the guy's like, yeah, we need you to get down to the track. I'm like, it's not cooled down. It's not refueled. It's not full of water. You know, what in the hell are you guys doing? And yeah, I went from a kick-ass pass to last place points.
What was the winning distance? You remember all right offhand?
No, I don't.
It wasn't that far.
Yeah,
it really wasn't that far. I mean,
yeah, truthfully, if everything would have happened, I know I would have probably at least had third, if not second place. So is what it was.
Let's say Nicky's Nightmare was running really good and he was 20 foot better. Right? You're still 380.
So be it. I mean, there's room there. There's room there.
And,
you know.
And I've seen numerous times, and it's happened at Toma a couple of times. I don't know. It's hard to make a decision and be safe as everybody. We got to be safe and all this stuff. But, you know, I think that same year or maybe a year after, Brandon Simon makes like a 375-foot pass, and that tractor average pass, I guess. I don't know. But, you know, they reset after that, and then, 300 feet. 295 was the winner. It's like it took all the energy. Like the crowd was so into it, and then it just got deflated. You know what I mean? It's like the entertainment just went. Yeah, we're gonna slow it down here.
Yeah, the next night, I don't know if I think it was Knapp that went, way out there, and it's like when they didn't reset it on him.
Oh yeah, that's it. It's always somebody always gets screwed, and then somebody lets it go. You know. Oh, we're back.
Yeah, and of course, Ryan. Yeah,
that's the hell warning.
This is round 2.
Obviously, Ryan doesn't want to say, the name of the person who made that call. But Ryan, what does their first name rhyme with?
The part that was disgusting is that the conversation on the headsets for the people were like, "Hey, someone better let him go. Someone better go talk to him." And that didn't happen.
They're like,
and
not for me. He's probably going to be upset.
It was acknowledged, and it never happened, and that sucks. And I'm not saying they don't have 10 things going on at once. Okay? Yeah, they've got 2 tracks going on, but man alive, it's the absolute same problem. I'm on the fire service. You guys know this, and you don't tell someone, hey, someone should call 911 when somebody's laying there not breathing, right?
Right.
The rule is you look at somebody and say, Tyler, you call 911.
Got it.
And that is what should have happened, and hopefully got learned after that. So it's that kind of exchange that needed to happen, and it didn't. So hopefully everybody learned from it. But I also will ask to make damn sure that when I come off that track, and you guys know it, it's not like I have the ability to go drive off and into the sunset on my own. I drive so far and have to stop. They've got to come get me anyway. So
yeah, absolutely. And Bill Borey's
Toma's my home track. So you know how home tracks go, right? Except for Chase and Louisville, but whatever.
No, but Wisconsin's Wisconsin, Tyler, not Michigan.
I guess where I'm getting at in all of this is the things that the people don't see, I guess. I can tell you this. It could be 1 o'clock in the morning, and we've all watched the poll get over at 10 o'clock and all this stuff. And, we're doing whatever, and you go through the pits. Ryan DeBroux still at his trailer. He's got a line of fans. He's talking to kids, giving autographs, selling T-shirts. I mean, this guy's working like all night long. Like he's had his whole family out for a week and a half, and you just cut it out from underneath him. You know what I'm saying? Like there's got to be it almost feels like there's no morals in that. Like here's a guy that's doing everything that you want a puller to do, represents the class very well. As top-notch.
If all of us acted like Ryan DeBroux, our mini rock class would be much more better recognized.
Yeah, right. There wouldn't be T-shirts saying "Chase sucks" on stuff. I mean, it would be like a suit and tie or something. But I don't know, dude. It rubbed me the wrong way with you guys. I mean, what do you think, Ryan? You guys are always the last class. Did you get to run first class somewhere this season?
Nashville, Nashville, Illinois. My father actually told me, he stopped by before the show started, and he goes, "Make sure you ask Ryan how he felt about running first," because we were standing next to you at the drivers' meeting, and I think Mears was like, "Super semis, you're going to be first over here," and you literally interrupted him, and you're like, "What? We're first? I'm not going to know what to do with myself." My dad walked up to you when the pull was half done, and you were just kind of standing there, you know, watching the event as one does. And he smacked you on the shoulder.
Never did.
He smacked you on the shoulder, and he said, "You are not doing your part. As the first class, when you get done pulling, you have to start enjoying a beverage for those of us who cannot. You better get to work."
Yeah. I was lost.
How did you feel about that? Were you a fan? Do you want some diversity? You want some first class, last class? What's your favorite?
Well, I told you guys I don't even take a shower and eat dinner till after the national anthem. And now we've got to be ahead of all of that through the scales and in the staging line. I went back. I left that. I shot back from that driver's meeting, and I put fuel in and topped off and put my ice in. I was like, holy man. And I was lost. It was like my first day. And it was weird. It was weird. I didn't know how to get timed out for the national anthem. I didn't, because we don't ever care about any of that stuff. So yeah, that was odd as hell. And then after we're done, I had my truck back. I had it on my trailer, and like,
damn, what?
I still want to go see this class and this class. And I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. These other guys just get to sit here in the stands and have a beverage. This is awesome. But before that was sheer terror. Yeah. So whatever.
So what caught you more off guard, Ryan? Was it them resetting the sled or being first class in Nashville?
Did you say off guard or pissed off? Which one was it?
You could answer both.
You said it's a gloves off podcast.
Yeah.
So you answer it.
What do you think?
Yeah, I was in denial of both.
Okay, that's fair. All right. Well, I feel like I have to address the elephant in the room that wasn't the only time you got caught off. Yeah. You know, before we get there, Ryan needs another drink before we dive into this. Ryan knows what I'm about to do.
I'm glad Adam's back now, and I'm glad everyone's safe there because he needs to be a part of this.
Absolutely. I believe it was also at Toma when you were a little caught off guard, but they didn't reset the sled on you, and Adam did such a terrific job telling the last story, but I would really love nothing more than for Ryan to tell this story from his perspective of when there was a disqualification that took place. Ryan, the floor is yours, sir.
I don't want to make it dragged out, but I need to tell you the details because they all matter.
I want all the details. Drag it out as much as you want.
So fans at Toma, they have an enormous hot pits area. It works out great. They can put, the mini rods, the unlimited, all the tractor classes, the tow tractors, hook them up by the front and they can back them in. But the semis are just, big and nasty to move around. So they wait for us to come in. So we're all congregated by the scales, and we actually went over the scale. And, the early classes, actually, I think it was Gary Shavink. He used to operate the sled that I used to pull against. He was trying to get out. I'm pretty sure it was Gary. And I wanted to get out of his way. I got to medicate here.
Yeah, certainly, sir.
This is the Gloves Off podcast. The no practice tonight.
Ding, ding.
So I was done on the scale, and I always warm up my truck before. And Gary wanted to get out, or whoever that trailer was wanted to get out, and I'm in their way. And they're not moving us in because they want to get some more room in the pit so that they don't have to jockey us around. And I'm not fighting it. I agree with it. And I thought, well, if I fire up my truck right now and I move it, I'll let it run and I'll warm it all up. What I'm about to go do in the hot pits, I'm just going to do out by the scale. Yeah. So I fire it up, warm it all up. We get in there. We get in the hot pits, and then all of a sudden they're calling all truck drivers, all semi guys to their trucks. And I've been pulling for 14 years, and how many years in the national stuff? 10 years. And I've never had my fuel pulled, at an event. Not that I'm scared of it. The last 2 years, I brought it willingly to PPL to test, and we were always passed, no problems. And whatever, I had nothing to worry about. But I also we've never been checked. So we give the sample. I don't have any experience with pulling out of the sample thing. I always just sampled my big jug, right? Because I wanted to know, is it good or is it not good? And, we make our pull and we go down, and honestly, the oil filter blew off my motor that day. Bad oil filter, and welded that sucker tight, at the end of the track. Get pulled off, and as I'm coming off and my truck is stinking like cooked oil and everything's garbage, got my helmet off, and I get notified, hey, you didn't pass. And I didn't pass what? It's like your fuel's hot. And I'm like, well, something's wrong. And we get off and I bring a different sample from my jug. And he's like, yep, that doesn't pass either. Okay, fine. I've never been sampled and never whatever, but I know something's wrong. And I'm not trying to be a whiny bitch about it, but I know there's nothing wrong. I have done nothing different than my other samples. We just had it tested, right before that, and it was fine. So I wanted to figure out what the problem was, because something is the problem. And weeks of conversations and everything else, and me shipping that fuel off to every other person that I know that has a tester, they were coming back with the samples were good. So why are we bad and why are we good? And there was one problem at the event, that the second tester wasn't available. Somebody had to leave for a wedding or whatever. The rule now, I know, states that you're supposed to have 2 separate samples. And it wasn't, or testers, and it wasn't available. So whatever, but I didn't know that at the time. And when I made that phone call, my window for fighting it or protesting it was over. Like I said, never been part of it. I mean, hell, there's 6 or 7 of us, and we've got enormous motors. And if I want more fuel, I have more fuel. I don't care. I don't need to push the envelope. I just made sure that I was legal a couple times. And couldn't figure out what the hell the problem was. And like I said, I shipped those samples out, but I could get them to change the numbers based on temperature.
Oh.
I later found out it's really important to have your calibration temperature and your sample temperature the same. You can't calibrate and have a sample that's higher. It's not going to be accurate. And remember I told you I ran my motor out by the scale?
Yes.
Well, I also found out, we made junk of the motor, and when we rebuilt that motor, it wouldn't idle worth a damn. We couldn't get things to work right. We could hear a lot of noise with the pump system, and things weren't happy. And we had experience with this once before. So on our electronic motor, not to get too in depth, there's pumping meters and there's dump meters. So like when we need more pressure, the meters kick up more and make more fuel. And when we pull back on the throttle, that fuel's got to go somewhere. So now there's dumps that open. So between the pumps and the dumps, they operate. We had a failure, and we had a dump we actually had a meter that was wide open. And so the dumps were always opening because it was aiming for this, but it was building to here. And essentially, it's just, how fluid makes pressure and temperature. And we had smoke coming off of our fuel when we fired up our motor in the shop the first time, and we had this wrong. We had our diesel fuel smoking in under 3 minutes. That's how hot that stuff got. Combustible temperature for diesel fuels are around 135 degrees, just so you know.
That's a little scary.
And
Damn.
it's going to turn diesel fuel into gasoline. And I'm like, holy shit, something's going on here. So we get this pump fix, and I'm like, wait a second. This happened last week when we were pulling. I made tons of heat in my fuel sample, and I ran it. And one of the statements was I wanted to get you guys before you sampled, before you guys warmed up. And I said, yeah, it's accurate for everybody except for me, because I started, in their defense, they didn't see me, started outside to get out of the way. And I just advanced my program by 10, 15 minutes. So I'm like, all right, maybe that's got something to do with it. And we went to a different event, and I had my fuel sampled by the other meter, and it was legit, but it was right on the line. Okay, but it's still legal. And then when we were going to get that original sampler tester to find me, I had my son go take my sample and go put it underneath the exhaust of my generator. And that fuel was Toma fuel. I have multiple vials of it, and I understand that nobody can vouch for me that I didn't, doctor it or whatever, but I don't care. I have to figure out what's going on. And I'm the only guy that has to figure this out, or the guy that I have to answer to. So when we warm sample of fuel, the problem I had was the original sensor that said I was illegal said I was right to the same level. And I'll tell you, I was this far away from not a 1-year suspension, but for a 5-year suspension. And I will tell you that Ryan DeBroux has no reason to cheat. Got it? That's not my goal. So when so the one sensor with the warm sample said, man, or the one tester, hey, you're right there, just like you were in Toma. All right. The other sampler that said I was just legal, I got way legal. I lost 2 full points, not decimal points, 2 full points. So that's where I had a problem, but everything passed, and you guys know the rules. You're not supposed to fight and get pissy on the track, right? You're supposed to talk about it after.
Save it for a podcast.
That's right.
Well, this is the first time we're talking about it. Have you seen me talk about it all year?
No, and kudos for you, the way you deliver your message. And it was, I would not be probably as politically correct as you've been here in this story. So
you're composing yourself quite well. Go on, sir.
So, publicly, I haven't said nothing, but the people involved, I've been on their phone and they're sick of hearing from me. But the reason why I have passion for this is because I know I didn't cheat. And I have no reason to. And I'm lucky enough to have some awesome sponsors. And none of them are that kind of company that wants to be involved with us. We'll talk about them in a minute. But, sure. I have bigger things. But even though I'm not talking about those national companies, it matters to me too much to cheat for that. It's not that important, right? I'm willingly able to go and bust an engine every weekend, but I'm not going to cheat. So that's what absolutely pissed me off. But NTPA has stuff in their program for a protest. Now I know about it. I've never had to deal with it before.
You must watch the podcast.
Yeah, but the same thing. But like also, if you get, if they say something was wrong, there's a procedure. I did not try it.
Sure.
I didn't know about it, but I will now. And they have an opportunity to test our fuel, and they are going to see me every day to test my fuel before I go on the track. I hope it's convenient for them, because they're going to see me every day, because I will not deal with that twice. So
I don't blame you at all. Like you say, you put in too much time, blood, sweat, and tears into this to have something like that happen to you. And it's just, I hope, we don't get everything perfect either as competitors. And I hope that they're willing to say something needs to change to prevent this from happening again. It's one thing to make a mistake once, but to ever make that same mistake twice is nothing but a damn shame. So I hope for you and everybody else's sake that doesn't happen again.
And to double down that, Tyler, not to cut you off, Ron, you can give me a tally for that. Tally. But, what we're just hearing this, and like this is, you've told the story yourself for the first time. What would you change differently, one, about the process? And the second part of the question that I want to know, what if there was a fuel mandate in the class where you had to run this fuel that we provide for you, wouldn't that eliminate all problems for everyone?
I guess. I mean,
I don't
someone
think
can always add something to their fuel sample.
Exactly.
You got a big barrel. I mean, what's stopping you from adding in there? And I'm not saying the semi-class is better than anything else, but I'm just saying there's a couple differences. We're an unlimited class. We can do whatever the heck we want. And nothing against this class. There is classes that have so many rules that fighting inside of the rules is the sport. Like the pro, or what is it, Super Farms. They've got turbo limits. They've got this limits. They've got that limits. We don't care. I don't care about my competitors. I just want to make sure that, the fuel, the big thing is that we don't want oxygenators in the fuel, that makes the fuel burn differently. So as long as they don't have oxygenators, and oxygenators are awesome to test for, dump it in a pan and you light it on fire if it sparks or if it pops or if it supports its own combustion, which I just told you diesel fuel doesn't support below 130 being a firefighter. Hey, it shouldn't burn, right? So that's very simple, to go for. Other than that, who cares? The problem I have, and I'm glad I just remembered to say this, what sets the meters off is lubricity. Who gives a shit how lubricated my oil is or my fuel is, right? Fuel pumps go through lots of pressure. And if you wanted to add extra lubricity, but it throws the numbers off, I'm sorry, that's not a tester we should be using. And the other problem I got is the tester they're using, I cannot buy.
That sucks. I hate that.
They're like, and they stand by it. They're super proud of it. And it's not like, you can't be proud of it, but I can't duplicate it. The guy that invented that style of tester is passed on, and there's only like 4 or 5 of them in existence. And some of the ones that said I was okay are that style of tester. So that sucks. They complain about what is it, Datatronics or whatever it is that you can buy, and their argument was, well, you can modify that by changing the calibration numbers. Well, what's the motivation for me changing the calibration numbers? If I use the same calibration fluid and the same number you do, rock on. Let's go. Let's make sure. I should be able to test to make sure that I'm prepared when I get on the scale and I'm 50 pounds light or 400 pounds too heavy. I have an opportunity to fix it. When my hitch is a half an inch off, it's never half an inch, but a quarter inch off, I have an opportunity to fix it. How come? I mean, they do provide you, and I will defend them. They do provide you the opportunity to get your fuel tested ahead. But like I said, in all these years, it's never been on the radar. And I've had it tested and it's been okay. So, that's the frustration.
Ryan, if you were making if you had to fix this problem, you made all the decisions to fix pulling that the No Practice podcast tries to do. How would you fix this problem? Like from a rule, if you're them, well, I say it's a problem. Maybe it's not even a problem, but like, how would you handle the situation? But how would you handle the situation?
Well, what's your goal? What are you trying to stop? You're trying to stop illegal performance enhancement, right? That's your end goal. Yes. You have to have a test that's going to grab that, and it's going to catch that in its traps. If somebody wants to add extra lubrication, have at it. Go ahead. If somebody wants to do, not mix it quite as hot, and the mix, we use a base fuel. We purchase our products from a vendor. I don't even want to say their name because I don't want to be part of it, but they're a reputable company. There's a recipe, so much of this, so much of that, so much of this lube, so much of that lube, and stabilizer, dump it all in, and away we go. And like I said, that mix has been followed. And when I tested at those other events, I said, hey, I know I'm under the rule, but am I under the rule by that, or am I under the rule by that? And I think and I'm going to lie to you, I haven't been part of this. I think it's 155 on a certain tester is what I'm allowed to. And I was at 135. I'm like, great. Because when I dump a gallon in, and if I'm a red one too much in my cup, I want to make sure that I don't, throw myself over the limit. So for sure. That's what So
it's kind of like a drug test. It's kind of like a drug test.
Yeah. I think we should all be able to have access to what they're using. Even if it's not as perfect as what they want to use, we should all be able to get it.
It's very, like, the diesel conversations are very interesting to me. I'm sure Tyler can agree, because it's pretty straightforward with us, outside of maybe a couple people that someone might suspect runs tricked out fuel, but like, you have to be so smart to do that. And spark plug methanol engine, from my standpoint, that if you don't know how to play in that world, you don't know how to play. But in diesel, as I've learned, it's very manipulative, and like it's a conversation. To me, like, I have no opinion on this other than that class, they have so much effing power. Like, why would you mess with fuel? But like, I don't know. Right, wrong, and different. But it's very interesting to hear. I mean, it's not a semi thing. It's a every class thing. So I think the checks and balances can definitely be fixed or improved to avoid dumb shit like this happening.
Yeah.
Quote unquote.
What's wild to me is, like you said, Ryan, like if you guys want more power, you put more air in, more fuel in. I mean, obviously it's more complex than that, but like if you want more, you can get more, and you're kind of just using what you feel like you can put down to the track as my takeaway.
Right.
You know, it doesn't come across to me like it's a class where if you can get another 50 horse, you're going to kick everyone's ass. Like,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We're not in a dyno competition. It's got to all work together. Power, traction, all that's got to work together. And, you know, I'm not saying that we're an elite class or whatever, but there is only 5 or 6 of us that are showing up. I just don't understand. I don't understand. Right. So
it's not like
sure.
Yeah. So,
well, no, thanks for telling your side of that story. Like I know it's drama, but I feel like it's good to get those things out in the open, because I'm sure there's some people listening that are like, yeah, I remember hearing that, but I never really did get to hear the full story of that. So
it's not drama. It's information with potential emotions from other people that listen to it.
Well, then that's the other thing. I guess I am glad I answered it, because I did not say anything for weeks, because we were trying to figure out what happened. I mean, and this took all the way to Rockwell, you know, so that's a span there that we're on the phone trying to figure out what's going on. And I wasn't defending myself because I wanted to leave a spot for them to back into. I wanted to leave a spot to say, hey, you know what? We didn't know about temperature, that he had temperature in his fuel, that, you know, they had no idea to know that. I left outs for stuff, but that didn't matter. And that's what I'm frustrated about. So
I don't blame you. I think you should bring that up in that rules meeting at the Enderle. Hopefully you did that, Ryan.
Imagine I did. And imagine there isn't one freaking mention of it in the rules this year, but we got all this other crap. You know, why would you be frustrated in the off season, right?
Maybe you weren't very clear. Maybe they took what you said. Okay. Yeah, I would imagine you were. I wish I could speak more to the goings on of why that is, but kudos to you for taking the time to go there and say your piece and do what you can to prevent that from happening to any other.
And thanks for your transparency, Ryan. We weren't trying to put you on the spot, but it's obviously part of our job to ask these questions. So,
for sure. Well, Ryan, we are going to shift into what we call the rapid fire segment, which I think you're familiar with. We're just going to roll through about 10 or a dozen questions. No explanation needed. Some of these are a little silly, but, you know, maybe it'll kind of break the tension after that last topic there. So here we go.
Hit me.
Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or a horse-sized duck?
100. What is the 100 ducks?
Okay, 100 horse-sized ducks. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get you. If you had to give a speech to a group of kids graduating high school, what would your one key piece of advice be?
Believe in yourself.
Love it. Favorite activity to do while on vacation?
Not work and fish.
Love it. What is the strangest thing you have ever eaten?
I don't even know what it was.
Pretty strange.
Like an oyster style thing or whatever. I'm not into that stuff.
Sounds very slurpy. First job you've ever had?
Oh, in middle school, cutting lawns. Made a trailer to pull behind my bike.
Very respectable. What everyday task would you win a gold medal in if it was the Olympics?
I don't know if it's every day, but I read all of the owner's manual for everything that I own.
No kidding? That is unbelievable.
And a fun fact, I got out of jury duty because of it too.
Really? All right. I might need to follow up on that one later. If you had to pick a puller to build your family a boat to escape a deserted island from, who would you choose to build it?
Boy.
Nobody from Michigan.
Who?
Yeah.
Wayne
no
Purser.
One from Michigan.
Wayne Purser, he spends a lot of time on the water.
It builds a hell of a trailer too, I tell you. If you were given a free 30-second Super Bowl commercial, what message would you try to send to the world?
That I live in Wisconsin and not Michigan.
What animal do you fear the most?
I won't even fucking say it because I don't. That is off the list. There's
Really?
no way I'm going to mention it because I will punch whoever tries to pull a funny little prank. I've literally told my wife that is off the list. So
it's a snake then. Got it.
yeah.
All right. If you had to pick one conspiracy theory to say that you completely believe in, which one would it be?
Oh boy, man, where do you come up with this stuff?
I don't know.
It's like an odd talent, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty worthless, isn't it?
It's like mixing fuel.
So you're not saying you believe in this, Ryan, but if you had to believe in just one, which would it be?
I can't come up with one. My wife watches all the political posts and everything else, and I mean, my mind is just flooded while we drive down the road.
Okay. Bring her in. Which one would she say she believes the most? This is her question.
At least tell me what your answer is. What's the one you believe in?
Yeah. Let's hear one.
Oh, the chemtrails and crop dusting. That's what.
Okay, I like it.
That's her latest and hot one. Yep.
It's a good one. I like it.
It's pretty hot, I gotta say. All right, if you had to compete against Chase and Adam in a 3-legged race with your leg tied to a fellow semi-puller, who would you be your partner for you guys to win?
Probably Ben Gordon. You guys, the semi-class, we're not mini rod pullers, right? We're on the upper side of the scale of weight, right?
You guys are sturdy. Yeah, some sturdy individuals.
On a windy day, we're your buddy, but maybe for racing, I don't know.
Fair enough. And lastly, would you have trusted the first person to eat an egg from a chicken?
I don't know.
I don't think so. It's a little weird, isn't it?
If they fried it, maybe, but not if it didn't fry it.
That's all there is to it. That's the rapid fire questions right there.
Well done, Ryan. Sorry.
I will tell you. You asked me before if there's anything that I didn't want to talk about, and I didn't even want to mention that animal because I knew there's no way you'd respect it. And here we go.
I swear nobody tipped me off to ask you that. That was by happenstance.
That's probably a lie because there's no doubt everyone that knows me knows that.
I swear nobody tipped me off to ask you that. So I gotta hear how reading
my same disclaimer though before you change it is that snakes are off the list. Whatever happens. You're gonna get punched or whatever. You asked for it.
Ryan, I will
April 2nd, 2025.
I will confide in you that I also don't like snakes and I don't want to be messed with either. And a lot of my coworkers know that. And they all kind of joke that they're going to do that. And I say to each one of them, I said, you can do that and it will be hilarious and you will get the reaction you want. I promise you. I said, but at some point, I will get you back. I will get even. And everybody knows that what happened, they will say, Tyler, you overreacted and you took that too far. That's the warning I get.
There's no way.
Famous last words.
So yes, I'm in the same boat. I got to ask, how does reading every single owner's manual for everything you get you out of jury duty?
There was a gentleman that, the lawyers ask you the questions and they said, does anyone here have any, medical experience, right? And, whatever juror I was, juror 12, like, what about you? I'm like, well, I'm on the fire department and I have EMT training. Okay. Anyone here work in construction, juror 12, like, well, when I was going to school for firefighting, I worked in a construction company. Anybody here work with aerial equipment? Well, yeah, we go up in the air to build a building. Anyone here, read an owner's manual or understand owner's manuals? And like, well, I also own my own business and it only costs me money if I don't understand how these things are supposed to work, no matter what it is. And the one lawyer was just smiling and he's like, you're my man. And the other lawyer looked at me like, you're the devil and you got to go. What it was a construction guy took a scissors lift and then he ran into the ceiling of the building and wasn't looking up, wasn't controlling it right. And then he pinched his hand and then it kept going up with his hand pinched. And, you know, I got to go home. I don't know what happened after that, but the judge put his head down and was smiling because I linked up to everything that guy, you know, asked questions. No matter how wide it was for firefighting or for equipment or for owner's manuals, that was my guy. That was my twin. So
Okay, so in that scenario, Ryan, if you had been on the jury, knowing the information you know, who was at fault, the operator or the scissors lift manufacturer?
I don't see how manufacturers can defend idiots.
Thank you. I agree with that statement. There always must be some human interpretation behind it. We are manufacturers of equipment as well. And I had it at one point. A guy said to me, I should not be able to operate this improperly and do any damage to the machine.
Yeah,
And
there's too many
tough
warning labels in our world.
Famous last words.
Yeah, they used to sort out a lot of that stuff without warning labels. It was just called natural selection. And
yeah, interesting how that works.
if we keep those people around, they all get to vote too, and it just doesn't work out well. So
Voting and breeding, that's what they're doing, I tell you.
Yeah.
Well, you briefly touched on it there. Give us a rundown of your wide array of occupations, that, you know, anything from cutting lawns at the beginning to what you do present day and everything in between that got you to where you are today.
I went to school to be a firefighter. I went and got my degree for that. And that was my dream. So, I mean, I was, started cutting lawns when I was a little kid. High school, sophomore year, didn't have my license yet. I worked at a bike shop. I used to race mountain bikes, believe it or not.
Really?
And I worked at a bike shop. And by the time I was in my junior year, at the end of my junior year, I was a store manager. So I was hiring and firing 40-year-old people when I was junior in high school. And I worked at that bike shop for a couple of years after, and took care of everything, ordering, pricing, everything. Went to school for firefighting, and then in the summers, I built buildings, like pole barns, whatever, that kind of buildings, and did that for a couple of years, and did the intern program through the fire service, and that was my dream, was to get a full-time job, and drove an LTL semi. I just got to make sure I don't screw up my 2 truths and a lie here. So, had that. That was my first driving job. Worked on farms all the time. Met Crystal, my wife, and worked on their farm, and just was always busy hauling milk on the weekends. Hauling milk on the weekends got me to my full-time profession. I built a relationship with a ton of farms in our area. I mean, we're dairy country. We're the base of the thumb of Wisconsin. So Green Bay is in the thumb of it. And that's where we live, and it's dairy central. The county next to me, there's 19,000 people and 135,000 dairy cows and 1 set of traffic lights. So, that's our industry here. And we're right outside the city of Green Bay. And, I went to school for firefighting. That was my dream. And started my own business. I don't want to get into the details of that because I can't screw up my other thing, or it'll take me too long to figure out my other questions for you. But I got my start at a young, what was I? 21 years old, and started buying equipment. And I knew these people. I also hauled diesel fuel during the week. I switched jobs, and something happened out of my control that I didn't get my fire service job, but I became a member of New Franken Fire in another month, 29 years ago. And I will tell you that it does not take 29 years to be a member of a fire department for 29 years. It's crazy. We get to enjoy the pulling family, the fire service. That's another family. You can have coworkers that, you like to drink beer with. The fire service is like the military. I've never been part of it, but this close from being part of it. Those brothers and sisters that you trust, that's a different deal. I will tell you that. And that's been an enormous part of my life. That's been a huge steering system, you know, how I want to live and what I mean and what I'm part of. So, you know, didn't get my full-time job for Green Bay, got stuck in some politics locally here that job went away. But I also started DeBroux Custom Work at, you know, 20 years, you know, 21 years old, something like that. And it was with those customers that I met hauling fuel and hauling milk. And I will say, as a business owner, it took me, 6 or 7 years to get screwed out of my first dollar. And that's a time when, you know, you couldn't grab your phone and type in DeBroux Custom Work and have my address and phone number. And my system was that I wasn't in the yellow pages or listed anywhere. And you had to call one of my customers to get my information. So, you know, I would get a phone call from my customer. Hey, you know, this is Dale. You know, my neighbor Ted is going to call you. You know, Ted's a great guy. You know, I'll accept Ted. We're going to work together. Hey, this is Dale. You know, my neighbor Ted, he asked for your number, and, you know, Ted's got some hard times, and maybe he didn't quite square up with his last worker, right? Or his last company that he worked with. And no problem. Thanks for the heads up. You know, when they call, it's like, hey, you know, it's awesome, but my business plan is to not be bigger than I can be successful for and be successful for that farm. And so we didn't have to take everybody. We could pick and choose. That's how I got 7 years without, you know, getting stung for any money. You know, we started DeBroux Custom Work. It was me, and he's probably listening tonight. You know, Jerome, 2 miles down the road, sold his cows, you know, ready to retire, and the coolest old guy you could ever meet. And you know, milking cows is hard on your body. You're always kneeling down, and a lot of guys retire, their backs are sore, their knees are shot, their hips are junk. You know, Jerome, how'd you wear out your hips? You know, why do you walk with a limp? And he used to go polka dancing with his wife. Used to be able to see him every Sunday morning. All of a sudden, my in-laws, you'd be by their house, and you see someone come waltzing through in front of them, and there'd be Jerome and Rita dancing around. Coolest old dude. And when we started, it was me and him. If either one of us had to be somewhere, there was a machine that didn't run. And what DeBroux Custom Work does is, we started with combines, but that second year, it didn't rain enough here, and all the corn had to go for cow feed. You know, cow feed is the number one. If you have extra rain and extra corn, then you can combine it. And it's like, man, I got these combines and we didn't have to do nothing this year, but I need a product or a crop that never goes away. And cow shit is my product. So I literally have a shitty job even on the good days. So, you know, we handle liquid manure. We take it out of their farm's yard, and they have big lagoons. Smallest lagoon we have is probably 300,000 gallons. Biggest farm we work with is like 85, 90 million gallons. So we take it from the dairy, and then we transport it and we apply it. And we take their most negative product, their cow shit, their most negative stinky product, and we try to turn it into an asset for them. You know, our job isn't to get the pit empty. Our job is to get the pit empty, safely and cleanly apply it to their land in lieu of fertilizer, so that we can turn their waste product into an asset. And that's where we're part of their partnership. And if you, in the opening conversation, you know, trying to work with me about a discount or ask about something else, you're already the wrong product. You're already the wrong customer, because a customer that all they want is discounts or whatever else, they can't appreciate a good job. And I don't want to fill up my schedule with the wrong kind of customer. I want to work for people that can appreciate a good job, can understand that we end up giving them a better value in the end for their own operation based on their reputation and how they can grow crops. So that's what's big deal to us. And now, you know, my boys are getting old enough. They're working there. They work awesome. They work hard, and couldn't be more proud, you know, and that, like, Adam's going to get, you know, later on in life, you know, right now, you know, they're young and that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. Make sure you enjoy all of it. But when they get older and they can do stuff in the shop with you, man, you know, that's the coolest surprise basically life has to offer.
Don't let them just hold the flashlight.
Yeah, no, I mean they're running their own machine, and where you did it right, and I'm gonna give them credit for this. One of the guys was kind of bending one of our rules, and we've got rules about how to treat some of the equipment, specifically our hose, and we get a lot of life out of our hose because we are good to it. We don't twist it up, kink it, or pull on it too hard. And Blake saw a rule getting bent, and that's not the important part. The important part is he was aware enough to see it, know it was wrong, and know he couldn't get on the radio and jack up that guy. So he called me and said, "Hey, Dad, this is what's going on, but make sure that you don't call me out on it." So not only did he realize what he had to do with the machine, he realized how to work with people. And you guys all know, you guys work with people. That's a secondary skill that you have to learn, right? That's what made me the most proud about that whole system, that whole deal. So I own DeBroux Custom Work. We have, 12 guys through the winter, and then we have 35, 40 people throughout the summer. And
wow.
Amazing.
And then I'm the fire chief at New Franken Fire Department for the last, year and a half or so. Like I said, I'm an almost 29-year member. I've been an officer for quite a while, and then assistant chief for, I don't even know, 3, 4, 5 years. I don't even remember. And then, became the fire chief. So, that's just an enormous part of my life. And if you've ever talked to me, you know that that's part of my life. There's just so much respect for everybody in that industry. And that's what's awesome about pulling. We get a chance to talk to, and in the semi class, I get a chance to talk to so many people about pulling. The truck drivers, they're like, "Hey, how the hell do you get, almost 5,000 horsepower out of a truck?" They get to check that stuff all out. And then we also, being Playin with Fire, there isn't a firefighter that isn't part of us. We turned our truck into a tribute truck for the fire service. We've got SCBA bottles that run our air brake system. And there'll be people asking, what's in there? It's like, well, what do you think? And they always say nitrous or propane or whatever. But meanwhile, while you're talking to them, a person will walk by and stop. That's an MSA 4,500 pound cylinder. They know the brand. They know that because that's their lifeline. That's the tool that allows them to walk into a burning building. They are aware of it. And, then they start looking and they're like, "Hey, this is pretty badass." We have the 9/11 memorial on the side of our weight box. And, we get to meet everybody. We go to Goshen, Indiana, the Goshen Fire Department. They gave me a challenge coin last year inside the fire service. That's like a, big term of respect. And it's that stuff that makes this fun. It's that stuff that makes all that effort of standing outside talking to these groups. That's what makes it pay off. So, and if you've ever been to a pull and pulled up, I mean, you've heard all this stuff. I puke this information, weekend and weekend and weekend. So
I love it. That's awesome. What, as a firefighter, like what is something that goes into that people don't even understand, the behind the scenes of it?
You're trying to manage chaos. You're trying to manage something that doesn't want to be managed, and there's so many variables to what goes on. And, personally, even in business, maybe something doesn't go right or a deal doesn't happen and it might cost you 20 grand or something, you learn a lesson, right? On the fire service, the weight is heavy. If you don't do something right, someone's hurt or someone's in pain for a long time. If, like I'm talking about a victim or a patient. On the other side is you're, essentially asking someone to go into, situations that are pretty hairy. Yes, we work on our training. Yes, we work on, dealing with those situations. But in the end of the day, you could have everything going right, but one thing goes wrong, or you don't know that something's in that building, and you're going to be staring into someone's kids and their wife. And that's not light. I mean, so, and the flip side of it is also, the saying is you risk little for little and you risk a lot for a lot. If it's not possible for someone to be surviving, you're not going to go risk your firefighters to deal with it, correct?
Yeah.
but now you're dealing with the family. Why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you going in? Why aren't you, because you're there. All they wanted was for you to get there. And now you have to deal with that. So, I mean, when you talk about heavy, and that's the thing that's part of it. That's part of the bad, but that's also part of the good. There's no bullshit,
Yeah.
by any of the.
We won't talk shit about rolls and pulling and this and that. Like that's real shit.
So, but when you can, we have a pulling family, and we always talk about it. And if you're not part of it, I guess you can't understand it. But the fire service has it, and that much more. So, that's what. And I'm blessed to be involved in both of those deals, right? So yeah, we're lucky that way.
Thanks for sharing that, Ryan. That's a good perspective that we can't ever speak of. We can give our opinion on a lot of shit. We can't give our opinion on that. So that's some real shit. And thank you for going there with us, because that's pretty damn cool.
Talk about Larry. There's a story that I've got to tell, and Adam knows the story.
Mm-hmm.
We were 9 levels into the awards ceremony, so I don't know if Adam remembers the story, but talking about respect, talking about family, talking about all that stuff, years and years and years ago, we were at Toma. I don't have spark plugs. I told you guys I'd have a weed eater, a lawnmower, and my wife's car, right? That's it. And Larry was just, we always saw him cleaning tires, right? Sharpening tires. We were in that corner over there, and my kids were way younger at the time. And, we had a little bit of stress with, other parents or family members or school members. Well, you guys are always gone. Your kids can't be part of this, can't be part of baseball, can't be part of that. And, I was lucky enough my kids didn't want to be part of baseball. But I told this to Larry because he was letting my kids crawl around in his mini rods, and we don't know nothing about them, and they're checking it out, and it's cool. And they're small. The kids are small. They're like, this is pretty cool. And chatting with Larry, and he's like, don't ever be ashamed for raising your kids in the pits. And he's like, I've been lucky enough to raise my kids in the pits. And he's like, in the pits, everybody's got to get their work done during the week. None of us are full-time pullers. They got to get their industry job done. They got to get their ride ready at night. They got to get their puller ready at night, and they got to get it loaded up. And they got to get it hauled off and to the event. And I will say on a side note, pulling's been super important for me for raising my family, because I would be the perfect person to work 7 days a week and all of a sudden have my kids be a teenager and be like, how the hell did this happen, right? I would literally work and miss it all. But pulling, because of my drive, because of my go attitude, pulling forces me to work at the pace I want, get my stuff done, get loaded up, and get out of town. But when I'm out of town, I'm spending it with my family. Like it, love it, or hate it, Thursday night, we're on the road. But it forces us to be together. And I didn't appreciate it or understand it as when it started happening. And, Larry told me, he's like, don't ever be ashamed of it. These people in these pits all have to work hard. Even if they got a lot of money, they can't buy the answer. You can't just write a check to somebody and get an answer. You always need help. So you can't be an asshole either, because you're not going to have any help to you. So these people at a core are, great people and a great example of how to raise kids. And that, I didn't know Larry. I just walked up to him and I knew of him. And I'm like, man, that really hit something with me, and Crystal also. Well, in 2018, the next year, we were able to win the PPL. That was the first national championship I won. And, I'm famous for not preparing for nothing, just like Chase not sending me the link for this show tonight. And we're eating, and Crystal's like, what are you going to say? I'm like, I don't know. Like, man, it's getting down there. You might want to figure this out. And that set something with me. And I stood up there and turned around, and I said, thank you to everybody in that room. Everybody in that room. I told that exact story like I told you guys. And I said, you all in this room have a part of me raising my kids, raising my family, and being an example to them. And I called out a couple of people that in there that, were visible in the front row. And And I didn't think that speech mattered at all. And like I told you, I don't know anything about spark plugs, right? The Sullivan team walked up, shook my hand. That's why we do it too. Family. This is a chance for us to do that. I've seen those guys. I respect those guys, but never talked to them. And I didn't know it mattered. Nelson's walked up, I never talked to them. And they said something. And there was other teams, and I was like, I didn't think it mattered to nobody. I just thought I occupied my 5 minutes and I got the hell off the stage.
You killed it.
Yeah. So that was, but I've never shied from that, right? I've always said that this is a big deal for family. This is a big deal. And it has to be important for family, because why the hell else would we give up this much time to travel to do this, right? For that, I'd stay in the local thing and, just drink more beer and not travel so much.
Spend less money.
Right. So that's the deal. And I wanted to make sure I got a chance to say that, because I respected the hell out of Larry.
I think he respected you a lot too, man. You got some good kids. You raised them right, and my dad could see right into people. He knows good ones when he sees them. He was always a big fan of yours. I'm a big fan of yours. Like here you are, you broke everything you own at Bowling Green, and you're worried about the boys riding around in a golf cart. You're red labeling in parts just so they can have fun too.
That was my interview at Bowling Green, was about the golf cart.
Right. That's good. And you know what? It's true. I grew up around a lot of pullers. I was usually mostly in other people's trailers most of the time, but like, your kids get out there, they know everybody. They're not afraid to help anybody. They jump in the tractors when I need them. They're awesome. I know I can always rely on them, but and they're well behaved. You don't have to worry about, maybe one time they may have gotten in trouble in Toma. I don't know, but it was, everybody's looking out for them. And it's a great group of family. That's the reason why I keep coming back every year.
Yeah, there's one group that I'm going to give a little shout out that probably doesn't get any kind of a shout out, is these guys that do the trackside photography. And I'm going to pick out one of them. I mean, because we had this conversation, but there's tons of them, and I don't even want to say their names because I'm going to forget them. But there's all those guys that you can buy your pictures from, and they grab that. But what I really appreciate is I like the pictures on the track, but I like it when they spin around and they grab those pictures of the candid pictures of the pit guys talking to the driver, or like maybe Tyler and his dad, or those candid pictures, the real ones. Those really matter to me. And there's a picture that stands out. Chase, my youngest, and the two Lustig kids in the stands. They got their jerseys on, they're labeled, but they're hanging out, and it was just a cool picture that I think it's Rusnik that got that one, and he said something to me that kind of blew my mind off, because at that time Chase was probably 9 or 10, and I sitting there, he's like, that those are lifelong friends there, and I'm like, yeah, he's like, you also know that you just probably met one of the guys in Chase's wedding party. Hell, he's 9 years old. That's the last thing I'm thinking about, but I really think he's 100% right. I mean, they're from Pennsylvania. That's nowhere near us. But fast forward to today, they're on their computers, playing Farming Simulator and games with each other every day. You're right. They make lifelong friends, and locally people go camping, and they know who they're going to see at the campground when they drive a half an hour and they open up the coolers and drink some beer. Well, my kids know who they're going to see, but they're people from Pennsylvania and from Ohio and from Indiana, and with Snapchat, hell, they know we're there before we're there, and when we roll in, they're waiting for us, and that part makes it worth it to drag your kids across the country, so that they're part of something and they're having fun too.
Absolutely. That truly is. I mean, you just encapsulated that very well. I think a big part of why my dad continued to do that, and why I still to this day, love doing that. My dad and I spend a lot of time together doing random stuff, but like pulling is really what just brings us together and ties it all in. So,
yeah. Shout out to all those people that make the sport go around. I have lifelong friends from the competitive side, everything.
Who's going to be in your wedding, Chase?
Well, still working that out, but
We'll figure it out one of these days.
not any photographers, I don't think.
No, you have to pay them to come to your wedding.
Did you pay for those pictures they gave you, Ryan?
What's that?
Did you pay for the pictures?
We tried to buy from all of them throughout the years, but those are good guys, and
No, they're great.
For sure.
Everyone involved in pulling is great people, and
Chase brought a winner circle picture for one of my buddies. He got it framed and everything. Gave it to him.
You should tell that story sometime.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. All right.
That could be a whole segment.
My favorite picture too, Ryan, that I have ever bought at a pull, and I bought 2 of them, and I have them blown up in like a 4 foot by 6 foot. And it is a picture of the rig and the trailer, and I think somebody's coming out of the rig, and there's like 6 different people standing around the trailer talking, and my dad's there, and I'm there, and people are sitting on the side by side, and somebody's laughing over by my tractor, and I'm just like, as cool as it is to have those pictures of the tractor going down the track, to get those photos of those moments caught is truly where it is. Before we end this, we're getting close to 2.5 hours. We're sneaking up on it. It's past 10:30.
Adam, have you survived? Have the tornadoes passed? Or are we still?
I hope so. There was some pretty serious stuff going on here for a minute, but I think we're good. I hate it that I missed it. We'll have to go back and listen to what you guys were talking about. I'm sure it was really good stuff. So apologize.
As long as
awkward podcast.
Is Aaron okay? I know Jamie's gone.
Oh yeah, he doesn't even know what's going on. He don't care. He's just running around, going up and down the steps and blabbering, saying all kinds of stuff.
Kids know no concern with the weather. Ryan, we have a little segment called 2 Truths, 1 Lie that you and I discussed on the phone earlier, and because Chase forgot to tell you about that. And I believe you prepared for it. So you're going to give us 3 statements. 2 of them are going to be truths. 1 will be a lie, and it will be up to us 3 to figure out which is which. Take it away.
All right. First tractor I bought was my neighbor's Magnum 7220 when I was 21 years old. My grandpa and now myself have had our Green Bay Packers season tickets since before Lambeau Field was built and before Vince Lombardi. And then the last one is my father-in-law and my brother-in-law were my bus drivers for school.
Ooh, those are tough. Well done, sir. You understood the assignment.
You've challenged. This is a challenging moment.
I'm going to say that the Packers thing is true.
I'm going to say that bus drivers is a lie.
Okay.
I'm going to say the Packers one is a lie because he's just too dedicated to other stuff to spend that much time at that many football games. So
before Lambeau Field, I mean, that place was built in
53, 58, no,
58,
something like that. Yeah. Okay, that's all your answers.
Well, I don't know. I guess maybe the first one's a lie. I guess the tractor.
The last one's a lie. I'm calling the bus driver a lie. Right?
Okay, no. So Adam, you're going to the first one now.
Yeah. No, I just said I know the Green Bay Packers thing has to be true.
Okay.
So Adam, you got the first one was a lie.
You could never dream something like the Green Bay Packers.
I think the Packers thing was
Ryan,
true.
Tyler, which one's yours?
I'm thinking the Packers tickets is a lie.
My grandpa owned tickets to Green Bay City Stadium, which is now where East High School plays. Years before, so all of the uncles that had tickets together when they built Lambeau Field, they went there and they all sat around in the stadium in their 10 or 12 spots. And they decided which ones they wanted, and then they picked it and they got rid of all the rest of them, so they all sat together. So I sit with my distant cousins in a row of 10 people.
Wow.
The most coveted season tickets on the planet.
That is awesome.
Holds like 81,000, 82,000, more than Texas Stadium if they don't put up the folding chairs. And years ago, Lambeau Field, the Packers used to play 2 games in Milwaukee where the Brewers play. And the NFL said no more playing on the baseball field because part of the field had the sand infield. So Lambeau Field has its season ticket holders, and then they brought up the Milwaukee tickets. So you'll see on our schedules that there's an asterisk by some of our games. The asterisks are the Milwaukee season tickets. They call it the gold package. And there is excess of 100,000 people on the waiting list to get season tickets. So they sold the stadium out twice and 100,000 more. You will not get on in your lifetime. And if a pregnant woman wants to put her kid's name down, they have to wait till they're born. There's like laws against it. So it's a big deal here. Okay. And Bernard Pigeon and bus number 11 was my ride home when I was a kid. And fast forward later on, that's my father-in-law. And then my brother-in-law also drove that bus. So fast forward from grade school on, my parents got divorced and I moved to Green Bay for my middle school years and high school. As soon as I turned 18, I moved back to the country, and that's where I live today. So, and I would never own a red freaking tractor.
I win.
I was buying equipment at 21 years old. I had the biggest loan as far as I know without owning a house, but there's no way you could convince me to buy a red one.
All right, Adam won this one tonight.
Well done.
Okay, we officially have a record show in terms of time. It's been awesome. It's a record show because of our
mishaps
to start and what's going on, but it hasn't taken away from the quality. But Ryan, any final shout outs? And I'm going to take Adam's words out of his mouth because he's not normally here. What would you change in pulling if you could change it? And any final shout outs to anyone else before we sign off?
It's a difficult system, but I would work on the rules. If you're going to I think you have to have those conversations. And if you're going to try to involve more than one club to those rules, that they all have to be present and part of it. In order, if it's that big of a deal, that you need to be part of it. As far as shout outs, I'm going to say it again. My wife, Crystal, and my boys, Marshall, Blake, and Chase. That's a big deal and why we can do what we do. It's been a ton of fun. Now being able to take the semi and flammable and going out and taking those on the track in the series. And the other shout outs, I have to talk about Brad, my mechanic. Without him being able to work on the Playin with Fire truck and then allows me to, run a business and take care of my other responsibilities, there's no way I could do it without him being part of our team. I wish he could come to more events, but he's got a family, he's got his boys, he's got things going on. So I will take what I can get for during the week and doing that. The first phone call I make when I come off the track is to him to talk about the vehicle. But also important is my sponsors. We've been blessed to have some awesome companies and awesome people to be involved with. Bennett Transportation and Logistics and Ace Dorn. Ace Dorn's like one of the oldest trucking companies there is. Bennett, they're a cool group. I can't say that about every company, but how they operate and what they do for their drivers and the 14 companies that they have underneath them, it's pretty special to have somebody work for one of those companies for 10, 20, 30 years and then have the owner sell out to Bennett and they tell them how the service and the respect went up. That doesn't happen too often when a bigger company takes them over, and Bennett does a great job with letting what made you unique and successful still operate. And so you're still working and driving for the same people you used to work for. That's really cool. And it's very refreshing to see a big company be able to do that. They handle on the small side, like boats and RVs and stuff like that out of Indiana and Goshen. We get to talk to their truck drivers and their drivers out of there. And then the biggest stuff they handle is stuff the size of the SpaceX rocket. So if you're going to be a trucking company and you operate from boats and trailers and RVs to the size of the SpaceX rocket, I think you got everything pretty much covered. So
yeah, I'd say so.
I'd say you pretty well got it under control.
You know, they're pretty cool. I don't have to sell a product and I don't have to get drivers, but what we are is we're an avenue for fun for their current employees, for the people doing the sales, their customers, and their drivers. So we get to have tailgate parties at the events. And what more can you ask for fun than when your job is to have fun and represent a company? And then our last sponsor is Cat Reman. You know, Cat's a huge company. They're big brother out there in the engine industry. And for them to have some buy-in for something that there's not a damn thing I do that's legal in their world. But
even the fuel.
Yeah. So
I'm kidding. I didn't say that. I'm sorry.
Even flipping it around, how do you want to have confidence in your product when, you know, yeah, you're trying to get 1 million miles out of it, but then I'm a goofball going down the track, you know, with 2,000-degree exhaust temperatures and burning 77 gallons of fuel in a mile. I would say that we're a pretty good proving ground for some of their stuff. So
badass shit.
It's been a ton of fun working with those, and I've been blessed to work with some cool companies. And we have a great time. We just had the truck show, so we got to see. That's a big deal for both of them.
I got to see you there for a short amount of time.
Yeah, Adam's busy doing stuff, whining and dining and signing autographs and kissing babies.
Yep.
So I didn't want to slow him down. So So yeah, hopefully we can get the truck pull. You know, hopefully that gets going again. That was always a lot of fun, indoor pulling.
Yeah. I want to say this because I was there and it was a great show, and Shell Rotella has me there every year, and you know, it was they absolutely love truck drivers, and you know, Caterpillar, you need to maybe pass it along to Cat Reman there that they need to change from Delvac to Rotella, just saying. But there was a huge footprint that was not there this year, and it was Mike Connie. And I think, you know, we sure missed him having it in the pool. For anybody that didn't know, they're actually going to do some major renovations to Freedom Hall, in between Freedom Hall and Broadbent. They're doing some massive renovations. But just being in that show and the Mike Connie's presence not there was very well felt throughout the whole show. A lot of people mentioned it. So hopefully they'll play ball with him, and we'll get that thing back going again. Mike does a great thing. He's a huge supporter of pulling, but he's also a huge supporter of truckers and the Mid-America Truck Show. And I mean, the booth size that he had there is phenomenal. But it was a great show. Got to meet a lot of truckers, got to see a lot of people, got to interact with a lot of new different people again, and see a lot of familiar faces again. So, like I said, I've seen Ryan walk by there, and you always see him at the truck show. I know it, but it was a good time. We're glad I got to see you.
You know, adding on to that, Adam, you know, I saw you on Thursday, but on Friday and Saturday I had my jersey on, and I was shocked on how many people walked up to me and saying, "Hey, you know, I know you're one of the pullers. With, you know, you're dressed loud with the jerseys on like we have." And, you know, he's like, "You know, I can't believe they're not having one, or how do I get tickets?" And you have to tell them that they're not having one. So that was a big deal, and I know the mini rods get to go there, so that's fun for you guys too, right? But the other thing that's missing is Mike and his partners, you know, all the companies that he worked on with his trailers, they raised some serious jack for some great causes. I think last year was that the Wounded Warrior Project or the Wounded Warriors, whatever division that was. You know, they raised $100,000 for them. You know, that's
Craig Morgan in there.
They had Craig Morgan, you know, and they take care of the pullers, you know, at $10,000 to win. You know, your class, and then and give away $100,000. I know Loves was a huge sponsor. They had the big truck in there at the beginning. That's I mean, it's the Louisville Farm Show, you know, that's awesome. You know, unfortunately we don't have semis in there. That'd be great if they changed it. But you know, it was great to have an opportunity at the truck show to be, I don't want to say equivalent, but you know, working towards that or trying to get, you know, a cool show.
Just give us Friday.
Ryan, like we talked about with rules earlier, all this is common sense to us, but it would take people getting along that like division, just to be honest. So, yeah,
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
if
Truck show.
pulling's not a big enough sport for people to be trying to cut each other's what's out. So maybe there'll come a day where everyone can work together for the betterment. That's all I'm going to say on that. But common
It
sense.
begged the truck show for them to let Mike Connie have a pull on Friday. It would be great if it was a Thursday, Friday, because let me tell you, if you've gone to a show like that for any trade show, Thursday full of excitement.
It only helps pulling.
Business. Yeah, all the business through the booth. You're getting to interact with all kinds of people. Thursday night, that's when things are happen. You get these big people from these companies. They're talking. Partnerships are made. They do things. Friday, kind of the same thing. Saturday rolls around. There was weather coming this year. People are getting out of there as fast as they can. The last thing they want to do is hang around on Saturday to go watch a tractor pull after the truck show is over with. Everybody that's important's gone. And I know that, the fans, some of the fans think, we don't need that big money in our sport. They put on a pretty good show there. And we need that money to put on a really good event.
Pulling needs unity, not division.
Sure.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, just get if we can get them people in there on Friday, perfect.
Unity affects egos and pocketbooks sometimes, so that's fortunately that's the world we're living in. But we're going to get it all fixed one day because we got people like Ryan helping us.
That's right.
There's people working on trying to get that back going, and the other thing is you don't really appreciate some stuff till it's gone. And when all of a sudden, when all of a sudden it didn't happen, and then you heard about it. I think there's going to be an effort made, and hopefully they can get stuff working again.
Maybe we all can get along and like appreciate that there's multiple events trying to get back to the saying, unity only helps. This is not politics.
It is. It's a political statement.
No, unity. Like we are not big enough to have people cut each other's freaking what's out all the time. Like I don't understand it, but.
We need a department of tractor pulling efficiency to come in and cut the fat out of it.
No, seriously, like if people could just get along and just shut that what up, it would be way better.
Yeah, for sure.
This is way too long of a podcast tonight.
Yeah, well, Ryan, before we let you go, I gotta throw my buddy Jim Schindorf's comment up there. He said, Tyler, ask Ryan if he's okay with a one-day hook. I hear a lot of scuttlebutt about it. Can you speak to the topic of one-day hooks, Ryan?
I don't particularly enjoy them. One-day hooks are it's all the work. You have all the work of the 2-day hooks, but you don't have any of the relaxation or any of the fun and none of the social part about it. Your travel expenses, it's just I really don't like the one-day hooks at all.
That's fair. That's hard to argue with. If you go to my buddy Jim Schindorf's pull here in Door, Michigan, he's going to do his damnedest to try to change your mind on that because I've heard he puts on a good show, but I had to throw that up there. So
yeah.
Ryan, do you have any questions for us before we set you free finally?
No, I've watched all of them. I like what you guys are doing. It's you guys have come a long way. You're doing a good job. I know all of you personally at different levels from different things, and in my I don't want to say my takeaway from each group, but it's different. Like I never met Chase Richardson. We were pitted next to them years and years and years ago at Rockwell, and I think you won there, or someone in your team won. You or CJ?
I had one there.
They freaking partied till I don't even know. I think we were eating breakfast and Chase was trying to go to bed, and I think he slept till 2 p.m.
Were you there? We got last. We did the same thing.
Yep, so, that's what I was gonna say.
All of that is fun, right? All of that is great. I don't know. I just sent Tyler a thing about it. I don't know anyone that can drink faster than Tyler can put it down the hatch. Appreciate his talents and how much fun he is, and Adam, I've known them for a long time. It's just It's all of it. It's a lot of fun. It's a little different venue here that we can do and a little different conversations. And got some weird ass questions. So, this is all fun. I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you to people like yourself, and especially to you this evening, to come on here and make this show what it is, because nobody wants to hear us three sit here and run our mouths. But people like you coming on here, telling stories, willing to tell the behind the scenes of, the goings on, that's what makes this show interesting. So we can't thank our guests enough, for sure.
I'm happy to be part of it.
I apologize for jumping on there and interrupt you right in the middle of right in the heart of a story.
I think
this
fucking whole show's been a roller coaster, from the technical difficulties to the tornadoes. Hey, but we made it through again. 37's in the books. Ryan DeBroux, you have the record podcast link. And just as a sign up, is it DeBroux or DeBroux?
Second way.
DeBroux.
Yes.
Okay.
DeBroux. Here we go, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ryan.
See you
To
guys.
episode 37. Cheers.
See you.
See y'all soon.
That's a wrap.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the No Practice Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Stay tuned for the next episode, where we guarantee there still won't be any practice.
Bye-bye.